Committee of the Whole and regarding to stormwater. Today is Monday, August 9, 2009. If you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. At our last council meeting, which was last week Monday, we agreed to address many of the stormwater issues as a committee of the whole meeting, so that the whole council is up here to discuss, and also that we would allow for interaction. We do not have public forum on the agenda for tonight, but I will open up the floor, and we also have the engineer, the city engineer that we contracted to actually look at our pumping stations to verify or find if they were on or off. We weren't sure if his report was going to be ready. It is. So I'm actually going to start off tonight with the report from Christopher Burke Engineering as the first item on our agenda. And then I will go, after the engineer speaks, I will then go to public forum and allow for question and answer to staff as well as to Mr. Burke as well. I'd like to welcome Mr. Christopher Burke from Christopher Burke Engineering. And I met Mr. Burke at several events. I'm on the Stormwater Commission for DuPage County, and I'd like to have Mr. Burke talk about his credentials because from what I have seen as a mayor, he is probably the most authority in stormwater management. He is the stormwater authority for DuPage County, many municipalities in DuPage County, as well as Cook County. With that, Mr. Burke, if you tell us a little bit about your credentials, your personal background, as well as your company. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, my name is Chris Burke, Christopher Burke Engineering. I'm president of the company. I have bachelor's, master's, and PhD. Master's and PhD, all of them are in civil engineering with an emphasis in water resources. I'm currently on the faculty at the University of Illinois at Chicago, where I've taught for the last 8 or 9 years courses in storm and hydraulics and hydrology. I'm also on the Board of Trustees of the Morton Arboretum Conservation Foundation, as well as the Wetlands Initiative. We represent a number of communities where we act as a city or village engineers, about 20 to 25 of those, and we provide services to other communities in Indiana and Illinois on stormwater and floodplain management, probably at least 25 additional communities throughout those areas. We have active projects in stormwater floodplain management that either have recently been constructed or are ready to go get constructed in Naperville, Bartlett, and Buffalo Grove as an example. We're currently working with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District on their Lower Des Plaines tributary study, looking at flood control measures to address the flooding that is experienced along the Des Plaines River tributaries. I think that's, and we've been involved with the preparation of ordinances in DuPage, Will, Kane, and we are working on the economic impact study for the new Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago ordinance. The assignment that I was asked to address tonight and I'll report on is evaluation of the Jackson and Saylor Sanitary Sewer Lift Station during that event of July 23rd, 24th, 2010. Some general facts about the pump station, lift station, and I apologize if I'm talking about things a lot of you already know. But the improvements were made to the station in 1988. There's 4 pumps, and what the word submersible means is they're in wet wells, which are big manholes or big, like sump pits, that hold these big pumps. There's 2 pumps that are at 1250 GPM, and we have 2 pumps at 1800 GPM. It's about 15 feet deep, so all the sanitary sewers that come in there, the main sanitary sewer line, is about 15 feet deep. For those of you that do know or don't know, sanitary sewer lift stations pump sewage from a lower elevation to a higher elevation. That is its purpose. It's not intended to pump stormwater. So this is strictly a sanitary sewer lift station. It has a device to break up the solids that come in there, and they have something called variable frequency drives to make sure that the pumps are matching the inflowing inflowing sewage. There's recently been constructed some exterior lights that will allow the, everybody to see whether the pumps are on and whether the generator's on. So there's lights out there right now. There's also a bypass switch in this lift station that will allow for the diversion of the sewage if it gets too great to divert it to the storm sewer. There's also a gas generator that's inside the building on the west side of the building. There's two doors. The westerly door is the door where there is a generator. And as you can imagine, it's a natural gas generator. And of course, there's an alarm system that, as I'll talk about here in a second, is connected up to the wastewater treatment plant. Now, this exhibit, North is up on all the exhibits I'm going to show. On the side here is Hillside is, I'm going to try to get this, and it's disappearing. On the far left side in the dashed red line is Hillside. On the far right side is York. On the north is Jackson. And the south is Harrison. The purpose of this exhibit is just to show you the area that is serviced by the lift station. So if your home is in that area, the sewage generated by your home goes to the lift station, which is shown right here in orange. Right there in orange is the Sailor Jackson lift station. The north limit is Madison. Thank you. What happens to the sewage during a condition like we have every day? The sanitary sewage is pumped happens too often. The sanitary sewer lift station is located right there. The water goes up in a force main up here to McKinley, and then in a gravity sewer, then eventually into the wastewater treatment plant, shown right here. So this portion here is a force main, which means it's under pressure. It's analogous to the water main that you get your water out of. The only difference is it's conveying sewage. So the pump station is located right there. There is also located right here, as I said, you can pump out the sewage into a storm sewer in the event that this station gets too filled, and that's located right here. So in the event that the sanitary sewer lift station gets to capacity, and it does, then it is, there's a bypass valve that the staff have to activate that sends the sewage to the west into the storm sewer system. This is a graph, and this is a graph of the SCADA system, which is called the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. There is no person named Tony SCADA. There is an actual acronym that the engineers have developed over the years that we use to describe. What this means is the information at all the pump stations that is being collected, that you can collect at the pump stations, is transmitted to one central location at the wastewater treatment plant. This way, everybody, people don't have to visit to see if there's a problem. The information regarding the lift station is transmitted to the wastewater treatment plant for each of the other, there's 21 other lift stations and or pump stations that the city monitors and maintains on a regular basis. This is an example of what that looks like. This is before the flood, and you can see that if you on the exhibit, I'll tell you, that's a 1 there. That represents about 1 million gallons per day. And what you're seeing here is the flow going out on one color and the elevation of the wet well, the water in the sewage. What's important here about this is simply that this is a type of information that's collected and transmitted. For the last 20 minutes that we've sat here, it's probably sent information 10 to 15 times to the wastewater treatment plant, telling it the condition of the pump station. So this is done on a routine basis. When there's a failure at the pump station, there's a immediate message sent to the wastewater treatment plant saying, there's a problem. There actually is, when the door opens to the pump station, it sends a message to the wastewater treatment plant operator saying there's a problem. If the pump stops, it says that it's a problem. So what I've got up here is a sample of some of the printouts that have occurred over the period of time. This particular one is showing when I went to the station and we opened the door and they had turned on the generator. So you'll see warning messages that indicate when I was there last Friday, we opened the door, the alarm was sent to the wastewater treatment plant. When the generator went on, there was an alarm sent to the wastewater treatment plant. When the generator went off, there was information sent to the wastewater treatment plant. So anything that happens at any of the stations regarding the operation of the wastewater treatment or the pump stations is sent to the wastewater treatment plant. Here's what we did. We met, my mechanical engineer spent a lot of time at the wastewater treatment plant. We interviewed staff. We looked at the plan drawings. As I said, we witnessed the generator operation. We witnessed the pump failure. We actually shut the pumps off to make sure that an alarm was going to be sent to the, and you'll see an example of what happens. We looked at the new lights. We looked at the SCADA system. We looked at the alarm history for July 23rd to 24th to make sure that there were no alarms that were sent to the wastewater treatment plant saying that the Jackson and Sailor pump station was out. We looked at a diagnostic test with the city staff, as I said, and reviewed the atlases and the stormwater management reports. So we performed that level of due diligence to determine whether or not the station was in operation. As I said, this is the type of thing that shows up at the wastewater treatment plant. In this particular case, you can see that one pump is running, pumps 2, 3, and 4 are not, and there is also queried, that is, there's a lot of information being sent to the staff to take a look, and there's information, boring information about the elevation that triggers the pumps and the elevation of the pumps in the wet well at any given time. So this is the type of information that's sent. This they can monitor the situation, the on-off, as well as the water level elevations. This shows a situation where all the pumps were turned off when my staff went there, just to show that there was no possibility of one of the pumps running, or all the pumps off, and it not indicating that all the pumps were off. So they shut down the system when my staff member was there, and they said shut it off. They shut it off at the pump station, and my staff went there, and this is the type of result that it clearly shows that there is a pump failure. There were actually warning messages transmitted at this time to the wastewater treatment plant. Now, once we determined that the SCADA system was not something that could be bypassed, we also asked for all the records that were available on the period of July 23rd, 24th. This shows a printout of the data for that period of time. That on my left is the start of the storm here, the 23rd, and this is about midnight here, and this continues on to noon the next day. In this particular, the green line shows the flows coming out of the station, and the blue line shows the water levels in the wet well, how high the water. And the water got very high. If you look, there's a scale here. If you look, it dropped about 4 feet when in this period of time, and that is when they kicked on the emergency pump, pumping the sewage into the down the street to the west into the storm sewer system. This is another screen dump, a printout of the situation that existed on July 23rd and 24th. This shows what pumps were in operation, what time they were turned on, and what time they were turned off. This is the type of information that comes in on a daily basis to the wastewater treatment plant from the station. This is the particular set of data points, and this is not just a curve. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of data. You can see the small fluctuations. My point here is this is not something someone can just draw in and duplicate or replicate. This is a series of actual data. These lines, the straight lines, indicate the pumps, and the pumps only pump at a constant rate. when they're at their maximum level. Other findings, the lift station was operating using ComEd. We looked at all the data that would indicate that if there was an alarm, the Commonwealth Edison service was not interrupted. The backup generator was not required. The generator, when it's housed inside the building, but it is noisy. When the generator is operating, you can hear it hundreds of feet away. I walked around the entire perimeter of the building. You can definitely hear it when it's around. However, the sound of the submersible pumps, when they're all running, the big pumps, can only be heard about 2 to 3 feet from the door. And I get approached because of the comments that I knew were made or the questions. About 2 to 3 feet when they're all working, that you can hear it. It sounds like a fan inside. When only one of the pumps was operating, it's barely discernible, meaning you have to get as close to the station as you can possibly get. We also indicated, based on our research, that the staff went out at 1:30 on the July 24th and manually opened and closed selected valves to allow for that discharge into the storm sewer system that I mentioned earlier. The pump ran continuously, as I said, until July 25th. The stations were monitored continuously at that time, and there was no disruption based on the SCADA system. Conclusions, very simply that based on the information that I was able to obtain and the interviews and all the other information, the station was operating throughout the event of July 23rd to 24th. It was running at capacity. It was full. There was clear water getting in it probably 3 to 4 times the amount of dry weather. It was full. It was pumping into the storm sewer. The wet well was above the emergency level. And the bypass, the other finding is the bypass pumps were started at 1:30 a.m. It dropped the wet well down, but the sanitary sewer system was surcharged until all the pumps were able to get the system down below the critical flood level.
We'll have that microphone looked at real quick. While we're working on that microphone, as a formality, I'm going to ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll just to establish a quorum. Clerk Spencer, if you'd be good to do that while they get the mic going, that'd be great.
Utenkoff.
Here.
Pezza.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin. Absent. York. Absent. Nybo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Morley. Absent. Kennedy. Absent. Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
10 present and 4 absent.
10 present, 4 absent. We have an official quorum. And how are we doing on that mic? We gotta make sure Mr. Burke could be heard. And
New batteries in here.
terrific. Technical difficulty overcome. Thank you. Go ahead, Christopher.
I think
Mr. Burke.
it died just as I was completing. Our conclusions are stated up above there, Mayor, and we believe that the system, we know that the system was operating, transmitting data, and the pumps were on during the 23rd, 24th July flood.
Okay, very good. I think this is important that we got a third-party engineering firm to come in and confirm this. I think a man of Mr. Burke's stature, with all his credentials, all the municipalities and even counties of government that he represents, and I believe Mr. Burke went out to the pumping station personally and examined the station himself. Is that correct, Mr. Burke?
That's correct.
Okay. So we really appreciate you taking charge of this to, I think, take doubt out of people's minds. And I think the folks that may have thought the pump was on didn't realize that they normally hear the generator, because ComEd does have issues in our community, as we all know. So typically they're used to hearing that generator on, it sounds like, in layman's terms. And actually, because ComEd, the outage didn't happen there, and we really didn't have a ton of outages in comparison to normal, the electric submersible pumps are very, very difficult to hear. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. And also, at the town hall meeting we had Tony Charleston, as well as the gentleman from the DuPage County. They actually opened up the DuPage County quarry, and that was also confirmed that was opened as well. So I think the two big issues of Jackson's, Sailor Jackson Lift Station and the quarry, we have disseminated that. We've got documentation. We've got third-party conferment that these were both, in fact, fully functional, fully operational, without even backup power. It's just that we received just an incredible amount of rain in a short period of time. You know, before we open this up to public comment, I just wanted to ask, in your professional opinion, a 7.3-inch rainfall, which is what we saw in 6 hours, I believe it was, is there any municipality that has a storm sewer system that you know of? What are most municipalities built to sustain in the street, Mr. Burke?
Most of the storm sewer systems that we design, even the brand new subdivisions, are all designed for a 5 to 10 year return period. And I know that the residents are tired of hearing about a 5-year storm, a 100-year storm, a 500-year storm, but certainly a design standard significantly less than that was experienced.
We're also going to have another mic here for you, just as a backup, because this will be important. Does anybody on the dais have any questions directly for Engineer Burke before we open it up to the public? Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, I just a couple of questions. And since we have you here this evening, I want to discuss that, but then I also would like to have an opportunity to discuss how we're going to move forward with this, because I think we're kind of piecemealing some things, and I want to talk about that in a minute. First off, I understand your credentials, but is there any way to get a copy of your resume? I'm not challenging your credentials. I just would like to see your resume so I understand that, you know, I know who we're dealing with. It's one thing, but it's our responsibility to make sure we understand who's telling us that this all functioned properly. I mean, it's great to see all your documentation, your hard work, and we appreciate that, but I really need to know that, you know, you've got the background to be able to do this. So if we could get a copy of the resume, that would be extremely helpful.
Certainly.
Another question I have for you is that if you focus primarily on the July 23rd, did you have a chance at all to look at the June 23rd storm as well? Did you do any review of that?
To the extent that we wanted to, we knew or we understood in our research that that pump station, the electrical supply went out, so that we knew that the generator was turned on. So we took a look at that storm event to see the error messages or the alarm messages that were sent to that station, and that indeed the generator was activated during that storm event. But we did not spend a lot of time with the wet well or the flow rates, because we understood that it was agreed that the electrical power service was disrupted to that station.
Okay, with that generator, is that generator capable of handling all 4 pumps that are in that location, or is it only capable of handling a certain number of them, or how does that generator work?
It's my understanding, and I asked that question, it is a very large generator. It's something that those of you that's seen it, it's a large generator that's capable, as I understood it from our conversations, to supply electrical service to the largest large pumps during the storm.
Okay. The other question that relates to a similar thing is, you mentioned a number of times this ability to divert the sanitary water into the storm water when it exceeds the capacity of that pump station, and that was done a number of times. We know that that occurs periodically at that pumping station. The question I have is 2 things. One is, can that system be automated? Because it seems as if we have to send somebody over there to do that. And then the second question I have that relates to the same thing is, what type of an impact does that have on the storm water system when the water is diverted from the sanitary sewer system to the storm water system?
I will answer the first question, which was, can it be automated? Yes, it can be automated, and it would just have to be some valves that would be it's not inexpensive. It would have to be something that would be retrofitted. So in theory, something like that can be accomplished. You need to keep track of when it's open and closed for permitting purposes. The other thing I forgot to mention, I know that the staff indicated that the force main that goes to the north has been programmed for 2011 to be upgraded in size so that you can convey more sewage with the same number of pumps, because that 10-inch pipe, you get a lot of resistance when you're trying to force water through pipes, and so the idea here was to have another force main to allow for more sewage to go to the north. The last question that you had was relative to what happens to the contribution of the stormwater. In situations when there's no accumulation of stormwater, the pump may be your only stormwater, but in this particular case, I'm guessing that the contributions from the lift station were relatively, still significant, but relatively insignificant compared to the total volume of stormwater that was on the street. We're talking about an MGD compared to many times that as far as stormwater accumulation.
I'm sorry, just a couple of follow-up questions. I'm assuming, based on what you've explained to us, that your primary focus of what you were looking at was what this pump station was doing. Did you have an opportunity to review with the staff at all the stormwater capacity for the city in that end of the town, or have you just been focused just on this one pump station?
We've focused our attention so far in the last week on this particular lift station, but we have had discussions about the stormwater pump stations. I went down and viewed the Jackson Street pump station and took a look at it shortly after the rainfall event that happened last week.
Okay, thank you. For right now, that's all. I may have more further.
Very good, very good. Anybody else? Alderman Nybo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Burke, I apologize. I was here a little late because we were up. Alderman Healy and I were at a Park District meeting dealing with the Salt Creek bike issue, so we were a little bit delayed. But an observation, a request, and then a question. An observation. I thought it'd be helpful that as many people who believe that there was a problem with the Jackson and Sailor lift station should know that we're looking at this, that we've got some preliminary results, but I still want them to have the opportunity to come in to hear your presentation and then also to give their own observations and ask additional questions. I know there are more people concerned about this issue than are here in the audience right now. And so I was thinking, you know, how can we find a way to let people know that this is happening? This meeting is being taped, right?
Correct.
So, and I see we've got a draft of the Front Porch newsletter here, which we're going to send out at some point soon. I would like to have a specific section saying, you know, we have an independent engineer who started to look at this issue. You can view, you know, his report, you know, and have a link to a PDF of the report as well as his presentation on the website. And then if we can, I think we should notify people in this newsletter that we're going to have a follow-up meeting if anybody wants to come in and raise particular questions, hear from Mr. Burke again. But I don't want to close this issue right now. I want there to be an opportunity as widely communicated as we can for residents to come in and continue this dialogue, because I think it's very important that we focus on building trust with our residents. And on this issue, I'm worried. I have not seen this in my tenure here on the council, that there is a great deal of mistrust in terms of them believing us on this issue. And I think it's important that we do everything that we can to show that we're looking into this, that we've exhausted every analysis, every review of the report, every question that might be out there, and that we thoroughly look at this issue. So I'd like to use the Front Porch. Here's my question. Can we go to the third slide? Do you have the ability to get the slides back up again? It's the picture where you show the service area for Jackson and Sailor Sanitary Sewer Lift Station. All right, here's my question, and it's somewhat related, but a little off subject for what you're presenting on right now. On Saturday morning of July 24th, I was actually out on Washington, and I don't want to say that there's any streets that are worse than any other street, but the problems that were experienced on Washington Street between Madison and McKinley were very pronounced. I know Mayor DeCiani was out there with me. The water was up to my waist, and not that I'm the tallest person in the world, but you know, it was pretty high, and it remained there. And not only was it high, but it remained there until about 12 in the afternoon, at least until about 12 in the afternoon. My observation as I was sitting out there in the water, bringing people generators, you know, like canoe, was when I looked across Madison, it was absolutely dry. When I looked south, across Madison, down Washington, it was absolutely dry. And now I'm looking at the service area here for the sanitary station, and I see that the boundary is at Madison. Could there be any connection between the problems that Washington experienced between Madison and McKinley and the fact that they're not connected to the service area for the sanitary station?
I'll defer it to Mike Hughes, our Public Works Director. Michael?
Thank you. Sorry. I I would go back just to keep everybody on the thought that the two systems are distinct, the sanitary and the storm. So this area, the section of Washington that I believe you're referring to, it does not ever send any water, any sanitary to this lift station. This area is generally drained by the Harrison and by the Jackson storm stations, which are located out at the creek. So that's something we definitely want to look into. How is it draining? How is it getting out? But relative to this sanitary lift station, it would have no impact on either their sanitary situation nor their storm situation. But we do need to look at what's going on at the storm pumping stations out at the creek.
Yeah, I mean, my observation was just that on that day, Madison seemed to be a boundary of sorts. Like Washington was very problematic, and I know Swain was problematic north of Madison, but I think a little further north. So I didn't know if there's any connection between the service area here and those problems just a little bit further north.
I think it's coincidental, because if you look at the old 100-year floodplain map, it just ends at Madison, going north for Washington and for Swain. So it's topographical in nature,
Okay.
I believe.
Thanks.
Alderman Pez, and I'll go to Alderman Shea.
Thank you. For Mr. Burke, please, first, I'm the furthest from an engineer you could possibly get, so bear with me with my question. When I look at the conclusions, it says that it was running at capacity. So my question is, when we say capacity, is it the capacity for that particular station and the way it was built, or is it a capacity which means just that's the maximum capacity any station could have? Do you understand my question?
I understand your question, Alderman, and certainly, you know, if you wanted to build a very, very large pump station at that location, you could do that. You could do that by increasing the pump size and the force main that I mentioned earlier, but you still are still having clear water getting into a pump station. That's what's triggering the rise in the elevation during the flooding event. And you're just having clear water that shouldn't be there. So you may want to look, before you just upgrade it and increase the size, you may want to look at addressing that particular problem first.
Okay, and then just one more. The bypass pumps were started at 1:30 a.m., and is that something that you said is programmed or automatically?
It's my understanding that the staff went out there about circa 1:30. They went out there and had to manually open up the ability and create the ability for the water to be diverted to the west, and that's something that is programmed. They get a sound, they get a reading, and the signal at the wastewater treatment plant saying that the wet well elevations, and those of you that have gone in there, there's a hole in the ground, and when the water gets to a certain height, it triggers an alarm and tells them they need to put that pump on.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick before we go to Alderman Shea, you mentioned there's a lot of clear water in the sanitary. What's the normal level in that sanitary? I don't know if you want to call it per million, and then what kind of water levels are we looking at during the height of the storm?
Well, you could, if you had pumps big enough, going back to the Alderman's question, you could probably have pumped 4 or perhaps 5 out, depending upon you know how long it took. It's hard to tell because you don't know how much water. I'm sure there was lots of water inside the sanitary sewer. If the water level in the wet well gets too high, that means that the sanitary sewer system is now surcharged. And so, but I would suggest that you be able to pump 4. It's about 3 is what, about 3, but we were still, the wet well was still rising at the time, so I'm suggesting that you had a lot of storage inside the sanitary sewer system, so you could have probably pumped 4, maybe even 5 out of there if you had the pumps.
Gotcha. And what caused all that? Because this is a sanitary pump. How did all that rainwater get in the sanitary?
The sanitary sewer gets filled from a number of ways. The most common ways are the sump pumps, the pumps that dewater the perimeter drains. Everybody's house, if you have a basement, newer, probably the last 40 or so years, there is a plastic pipe or a pipe around the perimeter to keep the water pressure from collapsing the walls, frankly, and those perimeter drains all go into a sump pump. The sump pump's different than ejector pumps. Some people may have ejector pumps, which are sealed. but the sump pumps are the ones that you hear the water trickling into, and those are supposed to discharge overland onto the ground or into a storm sewer system. That's clear water. What happens is if they're connected, that clear water from the sump pumps goes into the sanitary sewer. And all of a sudden, that sanitary sewer that's designed to take our domestic waste is quickly filled up. The capacity is taken up, and as I said earlier, 3-4 times the amount of water's getting in there, surcharges it. So the idea here is to get the clear water out of the sanitary sewer. And then, even on a moderately wet day, you're paying, as a municipality, the city is paying the cost of pumping that water, treating that water, chlorinating, dechlorinating, and doing all the other things. You're paying, it's not green to have your sanitary sewer filling up with clear water, because you're paying. And then what happens in severe events, very severe events, you have that clear water causing the sewage treatment plant to get filled, and then you have partially treated waste going into the creek. So the other source of clear water are downspouts, and area drains. Someone had a friend in the plumbing business that went out there and connected a little yard drain to the sanitary sewer. All the standing water disappeared. Well, it went to the sanitary sewer, and that's not where it's supposed to go.
Very good. Alderman Shea, and I'll go to Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, you said the electricity went out, but that's probably a ComEd thing. I just thought I just didn't know if we needed to relocate any transformers or anything like that. You said the generators did not go out.
That's correct. The generators did not go on. The electricity was the electrical source during the July event, the one that we just had. They had continuous source of electricity. They did not have to turn the generator on at Saylor and Jackson.
All right. You also said, well, the new subdivisions, you're doing the 5 or 10-year rain plans. Well, I just hope that they aren't cleaning out their basement 5 times in 2 years. But from looking at that, if you could put up number 11 again, slide number 11, that was the capacity.
Which one is that?
It's this, towards the end, the one about
Other findings? Or
the capacity.
Right there?
Yeah, right
Got it.
there. Okay. From looking at that, to me, it looks like we have to do one of two things or both. We have to decrease the amount of stormwater going in, because it obviously can only pump at a certain level, and it went above that, or we have to increase the sanitary pumps capacity, or we have to do both. And you said we could either, for the pumps, increase the size of the pumps, or what did you say about the pipes?
force main, which is the pipe. The pumps force the sewage into a force main, and it goes to the north. And so the city staff have programmed for 2011 making that a larger force main. So you can do, you said it right. Increase the pumps and the force main, or eliminate some of the sources of clear water.
Or do both.
Do both.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Brown, and then I'll go to Alderman Healy, and I got Alderman Wagner with a hand up. Alderman Healy takes a pass? Okay, we'll go right there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have, I guess, some comments and then a question for Mr. Burke as well. Mr. Burke, you stole some of my comments before I even got a chance to speak. I think the key here to note is what has been called I&I, the inflow and infiltration that we're seeing here in this city. The sanitary sewer, unlike Alderman Pezza, I do have an engineering background, not in civil, so I'm not out to steal anyone's job or anything. But I have had some internships within the civil engineering realm, and a sanitary sewer, even though the pipe might be relatively large, it is really designed for the flow to be at the, I don't know, bottom 1/4, bottom 1/3 of the pipe. When you get the inflow and the infiltration like this, that's what the reason that we're seeing these issues. And I think instead of looking at the effect, which really is the clear water getting into the backing up of the sanitary sewers in homes and on streets, et cetera, we need to look at what the cause is. And that is, I think, where we really should focus our efforts, because if we try to tackle the effect, be in the backup by overhead sewers, by various other programs, increasing the pump station, let alone cost and everything else that goes along with it, I think that we're ignoring that we're just adding costs to our overall water system. My one question for you, Mr. Burke, is from the standpoint of the force main that is proposed to be upgraded at the Sailor Street Sanitary. From your observation, was the blocking issue here, even though that we got a lot of I&I in the system on this day, was the blocking system the pumping station or was it the force main? And what I mean by that is if the force main was larger, then it's distributing the waste at a quicker rate, and therefore the pumping station could have been playing catch-up. So do you have any evaluation on which could have been the blocking point here?
It's probably both, and since you're an engineer, I'll risk. On the first page of general facts, if you take a look at their pumps, the pumps, they have two pumps, relatively low-flow pumps at 20 horsepower. Then you have two pumps, the 1800 GPM pumps, at 88 horsepower because of the friction loss in that 10-inch force main. So that force main is certainly a restriction, but at the same time, it's only a restriction because you're pumping so many more times that amount of water into that you should probably not be pumping.
So what I think I'm hearing you say, even if at this time during this event, if our force main would have been changed out, we still would have seen an issue, but maybe not as great of an issue, or it might have been even negligible.
Maybe just to clarify, the replacement of the force main was scheduled at a 10-inch. It had been programmed several years ago. I think the task that staff has recognized that should be evaluated is the pipe is the limiting factor, I think, is where you're going. The pumps are not maxed out, so if we can increase the capacity of the pipe, we can probably pump more, but there's an analysis that has to go on, which may be a good task for an outside consultant, in that this sewage then gets pumped up to McKinley to a junction box. We have to make sure that we don't move a problem, so that's an analysis that has to go on, but I would suggest that if it appears that some capacity could be added with a larger pipe, that would probably be a wise pursuit. The project is programmed, it's funded at $650,000 or $675,000. It would be an incremental increase to take that pipe from a 10-inch up to a 12 or a 15. So I think that's an analysis that needs to happen.
Great, thank you.
Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Burke, is there going along the lines of Alderman Brahm's last question, is there any kind of calculation that you can make from a 10-inch to a 12-inch or 15-inch force main pipe? In other words, we're at 12 million gallons per hour, I think, at max power right now. If we go to a 12 or 15, does it go to 24? Can we get another 5 million gallons per hour? I mean, is our calculation for it?
There's a performance curve and a head loss calculation, and it would have to be fit into the performance curves for your existing pumps to answer whether or not it makes sense to go to a 12 or other nominal pipe size and or exchange out the pumps, because it's the rating of the pumps that's equally important to the size of the pipe. I don't want to get to, I mean, there's a determination that you have to make. And it's not a linear determination, unfortunately, also to answer your question directly.
If you, I mean, hypothetically, we put a 15-inch pipe in, we're not going to get a 50% increase.
Probably not.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, Mr. Burke, on homes that have gravity drains, can you explain how that all works? And is there water going to the sanitary? Is it going to the storm? How does that work on those homes? Because the majority of our homes, unfortunately, have that. And we've got an overhead sewer program that we ran out of money in, but we're looking to make a movement soon to put some dollars in that fund. And I'd like to get an understanding of how that program will help.
And Mr. Hughes can correct me if I'm wrong. If you have gravity drains in an older house, it's highly unlikely that they are gravity draining into a storm sewer system. They are most likely gravity drain into a sanitary sewer. That clear water is getting the sanitary sewer, it starts filling it up, and those gravity drains are probably the first ones to start backing up because there's no protection like you have in the sump pump. At least there's an artificial protection between the elevated pipe that goes down into the sanitary sewer. So those would be the first ones. Those are definitely contributing clear water to the sanitary sewer in most all cases.
Would you say that that program would probably be one of the best programs to institute and fund to keep the water separate and protect homeowner?
Mayor, separating out the clear water and protecting houses with the sump pumps and getting that clear water out of the sanitary sewer is, I think, very, very important to eliminate the types of problems that people traditionally experience with those types of connections.
Okay. And the newer homes, just out of curiosity, do those are separate systems, or how are those new homes set up?
Well, in your community, because you have a separate storm sewer and a separate sanitary sewer, the sanitary wastes in the basement are either going by gravity or in most cases through an ejector pump, leaving the lower elevation and going up. You have it, that's an overhead sewer. So that is the preferred technique for having the sanitary sewer from the lower level out. And then you have some pumps that are discharging either overland, but in some cases, if the overland would go onto a neighbor's, I know that some municipalities, as yours included, have that water going into a storm sewer, and that way it does not have any opportunity to get into the sanitary sewer.
Okay. And the gutter tie-ins on the new construction homes, are those going in the storm or sanitary?
Either definitely not in the sanitary on new construction, and overland or into the storm sewer that I referred to earlier.
Okay. So it's a single thing that the private residents can do, and the city, I think, can help with, then is funding retrofitting homes that don't have overhead sewers, homes with gravity sewers, to separate the storm and the sanitary, and it's something that we're definitely going to look at diverting dollars to help that along. So, but I just want to confirm that we're doing the right thing. If we've got a lot of things on our agenda for tonight, I'm just wanting to make sure that that's something that definitely will help.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Any other questions, Alderman Mulliner?
Yeah, I just want to do a follow-up question. This relates to going back to the Jackson pump station for a second. That pump station, I'm assuming based on your analysis, is capable of handling all the sewage that's in this particular area without any issues, other than the fact that we have a pipe that may be undersized at this point?
Well, on a dry day, it can handle all the sewage that's coming to it.
Including with all of the new homes and everything else that's come into the area?
Well, the new homes, unless you're putting in, when we, as engineers, we estimate that everybody in this room generates 100 gallons per person per day. So if you have an average single-family home, and tell me if you do anything differently, you're using 4, we estimate that there's going to be 4 people, so that's 400 gallons per day generated from that house. And so it doesn't make a difference if it's an old house or a new house. That's typically what's generated. And that's also the type of water use. People, in an old house or new house use about the same amount of water on a given day. And I think you could track the water use with the homes as well. But the new homes, because I've had discussion with your staff, the new homes are having the sump pumps, the clear water going either on the grass or into a new storm sewer system.
Thank you.
Very good. Having grown up with 9 in a bungalow with 1 bathroom, I think that toilet flushed just as many times as my new home with 5. So more bodies in the house, the more you're going to have with water. Alderman Peasant, I'll go to Alderman Healy first, and I'll go to Alderman Peasant because Alderman Healy hasn't spoken yet.
I've got a question, and Mr. Burke, I don't know if you can answer it, but perhaps Director Hughes can. The Fifth Ward, which is directly north of Madison, up to McKinley, not included in this Jackson area. So would it be safe to say that problems that occurred in the Fifth Ward, which for the most part were raw sewage coming up, and we did have a couple areas that got hit hard with water coming in through window wells, et cetera, but a lot of it was sanitary sewer. Would anything that occurred in this area have impacted further north?
No, that area there is tributary to Berkeley and Adams lift station, sanitary lift station. But the causes are the same. It's the inflow and infiltration. I mean, it's a sanitary sewer that it was sized to carry sanitary flow. Back in the 60s, when the sewer separation program went on, they left the old sewers as the sanitaries because they were smaller, and all the new storm sewers that were installed were the larger pipes. So when that stormwater gets into the sanitary, it's immediately a problem.
Understand that the factors were the same. You know, that this area is not considerably different than the area to the north, but I've had people ask me if there were problems generated in our ward because of what happened at Jackson. What I'm hearing is absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely not. They're totally distinct. Nothing from that area goes through the Saylor and Jackson lift station.
Thank you.
Alderman Pezza.
Thank you. For Mr. Burke, once again, this has been probably a burning question within me for many years, and I'd just like your professional opinion. Given the scenario that there's approximately 1,200 new homes, residents in town, not commercial, not condos, just new homes, and they're probably 2 to 3, maybe sometimes 4 times the size of what it replaced, and let's say the majority of those 1,200 homes all had originally gutters, and those gutters went to the backyard, the side yard, down your driveway, went into the ground or a surface first, and then made its way wherever it went. 1,200 new homes later, I would bet 98% of those new homes, 3 times the space they take up, are all directly and immediately going into the storm sewers now. Does that make a difference?
There's 2 parts to my answer. One would be, what is the ultimate footprint? How much of the additional area has been, what the real amount of additional imperviousness is? Is it, 10%? By the time people start putting on decks and things like that, I think sometimes when we've done the analysis in these communities, it comes out to be fairly similar in the amount of imperviousness. But you are correct from the perspective when you are sending it directly into the storm sewer. And I know that this is a real problem that we've discussed, because if you don't put it into the storm sewer and you let it go onto someone's yard, then that water goes on to their neighbor's yard, and they attribute that additional runoff or any runoff to the contributions from that tear down, new house, whatever you want, a redevelopment. So on a clear day in the almost all scenarios, that additional amount of runoff is not going to make it will make a difference, but whether it's a significant difference or not, I'd want to sit down and actually run through the numbers before I would shoot from the hip here.
That would be great. And then second, regarding the overhead sewers, someone asked me today, and I couldn't answer, if we fund this overhead program, which sounds like a good idea, do we know, let's say there's 1,000 homes that need this, and they get it done, is there any impact this could then have after that is done?
No, because when you have an overhead sewer, it's only pumping the sewage that you generate in your house. It's not remember, that's what the overhead, it's an overhead sanitary sewer. So the only water that's being pumped is the water that you are generating, which is the same water you would generate on a dry day. And so the sewage, what you're doing is just taking the sewage that you're generating and bringing it up and over, versus allowing that clear water that's getting in from your neighbors to come in to your basement. So that's the only water that you're not allowing the sewage to back up into your house. That's the only thing you're prohibiting or adding to the sewer system during those types of events. But the idea here on the overhead sewers now, this is really important, because everybody says, and you start getting in some of the meetings that I've attended, people start nodding their head. They have an overhead sewer, but they still have the footing drains and the downspouts. Believe it or not, the downspouts, which are a huge generator of clear water connected up on the other side. So now that little overhead sewer is pumping all of their water. And it should only be designed and constructed to take the sewage from the dwelling unit itself.
And real quick, having grown up in a bungalow with drain tile around it and gravity sewers, the water coming out from the gutters goes into the ground and into the drain tile, which then goes into your gravity sewers, which goes into your sanitary. So even though the ground does absorb, I would almost argue on my parents' bungalow with the side-load garage and a detached side-load driveway and a detached garage with about a, I don't know, 1,600 square foot footprint, that there was less pervious space than on my new home, you know, just because of how much concrete, how much driveway, you know, detached garages are and the newer homes far less used, et cetera. So, but it's good. It's a good perception, just to kind of, you know, hopefully take some doubt out of some of these concerns, because naturally we're all looking for the magic bullet that's going to fix this, and then, you know, I think the overhead sewer program is probably the biggest one, according to Mr. Burke, that we can do, and then actually analyze some of the infrastructure in these low streets, Washington, Pine Street. Look at these lift stations, if we can make them bigger, if we can pump more water, because ultimately even people with overhead sewers on those streets got water sometimes even on the first floor. So we need to stop that from happening. That's what the task force will be up to, and I welcome Mr. Burke's opinion on that as well too. Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually want to challenge Mr. Burke's opinion on that. And the rationale behind it, I think, might have been a little clouded, no pun intended, on the answer to that question. And I from Alderman Pez's question, I think that if the overhead sewer program increased within the city of Elmhurst, obviously it would help that residence. Obviously, it also wouldn't do any increase in capacity to the storm system. It would only be, and it wouldn't increase the sanitary either. So it's going to prevent that single residence or the residents who invest in this program to prevent, I don't want to even say totally mitigate, but prevent to some degree sewer backup in their residence. But if there's a significant increase in the overhead sewer program, what about the remaining homes that still have the gravity-forced sewer system? I would think, just from my rationale, would be that they would see an increase in the impact if the event like this occurred again, because there would be less, less areas, less residents that have the low gravity systems, and therefore the backup would be concentrated to fewer homes. So I would think those single residents that don't have the overhead sewers would see a greater impact. Is that a true assessment?
I understand the question, and it makes sense. I would also suggest that when you're doing I assume that when you're doing the overhead sewers, you are at the same time requiring anybody that gets the overhead sewer to disconnect all of their clear water sources from the sanitary source. So when they're doing one, they're doing the other when they're putting the overhead. So you're eliminating a lot of the clear water that is being contributed by those people that don't have the overhead sewers, or where you're putting the overhead sewers in. And yes, the one component that you're taking out, you are eliminating the sewage backing up into those homes. Yes. And to the extent that you're eliminating sewage backup in Mrs. Smith's house, that there could be an addition, that sewage is still going to go, if there's a bungalow with a drain, just like it goes up today, it will back up. Whether or not Mrs. Doe gets 12.5 or 12 or 13 inches is kind of it's an interesting exercise. But I would suggest that if you have a gravity drain and you have a situation where you're getting back up today, it would be an increment, but it's not going to jump it up a foot. It's not going to jump it up much more.
Agreed, and I actually forgot to actually state my assumption. I think the number one thing that we can do as a city is hunt down where the I&I, the inflow and infiltration, is coming from. I think the overhead sewer program is definitely a close second to that. But again, the I&I is what's causing this to happen. And if we neglect to hunt down the root cause of that, which some of it could be from exactly what you stated, illegal or not up to code hookups to the sanitary system could be a big part of that. I don't know if we as a city know the facts to that today, and maybe Mr. Hughes could speak to that, but I think the biggest thing that we can do today is hunt down I&I and find out, and I'll actually make a call out to all the residents of the city of Elmhurst, is that, you know, if you don't want to do damage to your neighbors, make sure that we are hooked up properly per code to prevent this from happening, because you might think, oh, it's only my house that's hooked up to the hooked up illegally, but when they all add up, these are the results that we get. Thank you.
Real quick, too, I'm sorry, Alderman Gutenkopf, real quick, the I&I, probably the largest producer of I&I is gravity drains. Is that correct, Mr. Burke?
Gravity drains provide a significant amount. I think that if you had an area drain, you'd find someone's backyard or front yard that those area drains are going to contribute significant amounts as well. And I should also point out, you have done as I understand it, 25 miles of sewer lining to eliminate the contributions of clear water through cracks. The alderman's talked about I&I. You've reduced the public sector I&I. There's still this sanitary sewer lateral that goes from the house to the main sewer out in the street. Those are getting any newer or any better. Those are potential contributions of clear water or the I&I as well.
Very good. Very good. Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to restate something that Alderman Bram said, just to start with, just to be clear. It is illegal to connect a storm sump pump into your sanitary sewer. We have a code about this, and it's not legal to do it. We've danced around this. We haven't stated it bluntly, and I would like to state this very bluntly, because it sort of feeds into my other questions about gravity drains. Elmhurst has 2 systems, one for storm sewer and one for sanitary sewer, and I live in an old house in Elmhurst. I don't have a perimeter drain. My downspouts drain into my yard. I didn't have a perimeter drain outside of my house or inside my house, and I used to get seepage. And that seepage is what I'm assuming you're referring to when you talk about clear water going into gravity drains in the floor in somebody's basement. This is kind of getting back to my real question here is where is all this water coming into the gravity drains in people's houses? Now I have a perimeter drain system inside my house. It goes into a sump pump. It pumps into my front yard. Alderman Pezza mentioned new houses. Our building code now requires all new houses to tie downspouts and perimeter drains directly into the storm system. So those 1,200-ish new homes are all directly pumping into the storm system. And based on your answer to her question, I wasn't sure if you realized that we are requiring them to do that they have to go in there. So I guess what I really want to understand is, where is all this clear water coming from that's ending up in people's basement gravity drains? The amount of seepage that I got before I put the system in was annoying, but it certainly wasn't hundreds of gallons of water. And it seems to me that our sanitary system was so overcharged because there were thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of clear water that got into it. I'm having trouble picturing where it all comes from if, in fact, we have a sump pump disconnect program that requires a house being sold to be inspected to make sure that we're not pumping directly into the sanitary system, and if all these perimeter drains in the new houses are going into the storm system. Is it that there are lots of people with lots of water in their basement and that's going into the sanitary system? Where does it all, how much of a contributing factor can these drains possibly be?
It's a significant factor, and every community in northeastern Illinois probably has an ordinance that prohibits the connection of a sump pump and or roof drains into the sanitary sewer. I was at a community last week where someone did a new smoke test, and found 17 roof drains on one block still connected, even after they were by ordinance required, not this community, I just want to make sure, but but by ordinance, they were, back in the 80s when there was smoke testing done, they were supposed to have been disconnected. Now, the specific question that you're asking about the gravity drains, now, I don't know what the age of your home is, but I'll give a hypothetical situation. If you have a drain around the perimeter of your home, you may not even know that it's there. It may connect up. It would connect directly to the sanitary sewer outside, not inside, and go on its way directly there. And where you would find backup is through the drain, the floor drain, and or a sink or a toilet in the lower level. That's typically what happens because the water levels rise in the sanitary sewer. As soon as the sewer levels rise, it just rises up the hydraulic grade line, goes right into the house. And that's typically what happens. If you don't have a drain, then the likely scenario is that other than the connection from your house to the sewer, you're probably not contributing any other clear water to that line. But that house to the sewer, when you first moved in there, it was brand new. It didn't have trees growing above it. And I know that I'm sure there's people in town that have to have Roto-Rooter come out and to remove roots on a periodic basis. Those roots are not coming in stealth-like. They're going through cracks, fissures in the pipe, and that's how clear water can also enter your system.
Follow-up?
Sure, go ahead, Alderman.
Okay, so a lot of residents complained that they were getting sanitary backup in their sinks in their basement, in their bathtubs in their basement, in their toilets in their basement. Are you saying that that potentially is because they have a perimeter drain that they don't necessarily know about that is connected into that's dumping clear water into the sanitary sewer and the sanitary's backing up?
Well, I don't know if the other facts are correct, but I do know that the scenario that you're talking about, where the sewer rose, the elevations of the sewer rose, and they started getting water bubbling up, that's a situation where they most likely do not have an overhead sewer that we're talking about. And so I don't know if it's their clear water that's contributing to the sanitary sewer and filling it, their neighbor's clear water, or a yard drain in the middle of someone's backyard. Does that answer your question? I mean, so I don't know where the clear water is coming from, but the scenario that you're describing is a result of the sanitary sewer rising up and them not having overhead sewers. Now, I should also point out, if there's all overhead sewers are not created equal. And we all know from having people put things in our house, not every installer does it the right way or even a good way. So people have said to me over the years, I had overhead sewers, but they had the $3 backflow preventer rather than a brass fitting as an example. So if you were to go forward with it, I would recommend that you develop standards that would provide the maximum level of protection that you can get with the plumbing that you would be putting in.
Absolutely. I think given the fact that we'll be funding a lot of this through public dollars, we'll make sure that those people are compliant and use the best equipment and maybe some recommended contractors from the area as well too. So, anybody else before we open it up to the public? Alderman Nybel?
Yeah, 3 quick questions, and this is from Mr. Burke or even anybody on our staff. Can anybody give a ballpark figure for the average cost to fix an illegal disconnect?
The cost, first of all, is a function of how much, how well fixed up, that's not a term, what the basement looks like, what the amount of replumbing that's necessary, and of course, if there's work to be done outside, what the landscaping looks like over the house. But I think it could be from 5 to 10. Mr. Hughes said averaging 8 to 9, so 5 to 10 would be the range I would suggest.
Mr. Bram is nodding his head. He couldn't clarify if he wants to. But here's my follow-up question. In addition to an overhead sewer program, if we were to prioritize things that we could do or subsidize or assist with, would assisting with fixing illegal disconnects be one of the things that would be high up on that list?
In my opinion, yes, for a number of reasons. One, it has an immediate effect on addressing the sewer surcharge or backup. It eliminates you having to treat the water, pay the electricity, and, doing all those things that you do at your wastewater treatment plant, and having the Sailor and Jackson lift station pump all the time. And, so, yes.
Okay, and here's my final question. This kind of opens it up to a broader question for Mr. Burke. I was actually one of the people who thought that having someone like Mr. Burke come in would be very helpful. And in fact, I know Mr. Burke, and I know some people with his firm, and I know how reputable they are, and I'm glad that we have someone like him here tonight to answer some of these questions. The broader question, this goes to Alderman Mulliner's original observation, was, we knew that we wanted someone to take a look at whether the sanitary lift station was working or not. But beyond that, I think a lot of us are kind of just grasping at straws at this point in terms of maybe we should look at this, maybe we should look at that. So my broader question to Mr. Burke is kind of having become familiar with what we experienced and what our problems are and what our infrastructure is like, can you begin to opine or offer some suggestions as to what steps we should be taking or things that we should? Overhead sewer is obviously a big first step. Seeing if we can address sewer disconnects is another one. But do you have any suggestions or guidelines or advice for us as we address some of these issues?
I've looked at the reports that have been prepared, including the 1996 HARSA report, and as Mr. Hughes pointed out to me earlier this evening, there's lots and lots of other reports that have been prepared over the years. Some of the measures that have been recommended have been implemented. Others, because of cost, were not implemented. I think that it would be there's improvements that can be made to the system. There are improvements that cannot be made to the system because of permit constraints and other infrastructure constraints. But there would be, I would suggest that you look at implementing a variety of different stormwater and or flood control measures in addition to the sanitary sewer improvements that we're talking about tonight.
Alderman Healy. I'll go to Alderman Pezza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to add on to Alderman Nybel's last point. I think we have to be careful on what we hear and what we say. Alderman Brand mentioned that I&I might be the #1 issue we have to address, and that's probably true on the sanitary sewer side. But even if we address that on the sanitary sewer side, if we had a sanitary sewer system that was 100% free of I&I, that would not have helped the people on Washington, that would not have helped the people on Swain, that would not have helped the people, on South Spring. So we have to be careful when we say that this is #1 or that's #1 because we've got a lot of different issues at work here. And I think that's important. While, sewer backup is horrible and wouldn't wish it on anybody, and we'll solve it, there are other issues that are at play. So I'm going to be careful to say that's #1 or that's #1.
Right. Before I go to Alderman Pezza, I think the value Mr. Burke has, not only his credentials and his ability to understand stormwater management and sustainability, his reputation with DuPage County and Cook County and many municipalities, but we've got issues with how much water we can put in the creek. 2/3 of our water goes to the creek, 1/3 of our water goes to the North Lake Reservoir. And this man understands how much more we can put in, and possibly, if there's an ability to possibly go in the back door of the quarry if we can't put any more water into the creek. So these spots, these problematic spots, Washington, Pine, Sailor, Swain, Prospect, Parkside, the streets are, go on and on. Perhaps an infrastructure upgrade that can, if we can maximize water getting pumped to Salt Creek, great. And as soon as we max that out, if we can divert the rest of it toward the quarry, or if we can't go right to the quarry, but I think this gentleman here will get us as much ability, as much knowledge as possible. So not only be able to confirm any disputes that we may have mistrust from the public, but also more importantly, as Alderman Healy says, how do we solve these problems with these vulnerable areas? And a lot of them, if you look at that elevation map, are just low spots. So there's got to be a way we can get that water out of there. So we're counting on you, Mr. Burke, to hopefully guide us through this maze and path. And I'd almost like to make a recommendation, maybe at our next meeting, that we actually retain Mr. Burke for the actual task force as well too. So, Alderman Pezza.
Just a quick follow-up. I think perhaps Alderman Nyba was referring to something that could be as simple as a flip of a switch or just rerouting a pipe when you refer to some of these sump pump the disconnect program and the way they're tied in. I've been in many a home where people actually have a little switch where they turn it and it drains to the sanitary system, and then they could switch it back and it drains to the storm system. I've seen a lot of that, and I've also seen where it's just hooked up improperly, and I believe it's a very inexpensive fix for those types, if that's what you were referring to.
Question?
I wasn't sure if that's what you're referring to as far as how to,
Alderman Pez is fiduciary duty of the city. If you have people doing things illegally, we like to
well,
have those.
they've all been addressed.
Can
Yeah.
I answer the question?
Yeah, Alderman Nybo.
Actually, I wasn't referring to that. I mean, my point of reference was the original answer that it's, you know, an $8,000 to $9,000 fix on average, you know, and it could be quite expensive. So I guess I was, with that information, then trying to prioritize, you know, where in the long list of things that we could be doing would we want to place, you know, fixing illegal sewer disconnects.
Yeah.
But I wasn't envisioning anything cheap, because I didn't know
Some
point of
could be,
reference.
yeah.
Okay.
Right, right. And one thing that we do have in place now is adjudication, which we didn't have years ago. So, you know, if somebody was doing that improperly, they may have gotten a fine and went out to Wheaton, and the judges, we're very weak on those types of cases. We're doing those cases here at City Hall now, as well as a lot of other code violations, and we're seeing maximum response, maximum compliance, rentals, all the different things that we've discussed, and the reason why we put adjudication. So maybe we could even, if we do attack it at that level, you know, have it self-adjudicated here. So if there are folks that get slapped on the hand, get a time limit to fix it, and then if they don't, then, you know, so those are all things we could talk about. Alderman Brown, Brom, and then I'll go to Alderman Mulliner.
Thank you. I just want to, I think, clarify on some of the comments that have been made. I think, and Mr. Burke, you can put me in check if I'm incorrect here, the $8,000 to $9,000 estimate was the cost to install the overhead sewers. To disconnect something that's illegal, is not necessarily that cost. It could be as much as $10 from Home Depot, depending on how it's illegally hooked up. So I just want to clarify when we talk about illegal hookups and then the benefits of the overhead sewer program. To install an overhead sewer in one's home is approximately the $8,000 to $10,000 range, not to disconnect something that's hooked up illegal. That could be, a PVC saw from Home Depot and disconnect it with about a half-hour worth of work. So depending on the situation, but I just wanted to clarify that.
I agree.
Okay. Alderman Mulliner?
Yeah, I know we want to go to the public and let them ask some questions, but I want to say something right now and make sure that everybody hears what I'm a little bit concerned about where we're going right now. Right now, we seem like we're doing a shotgun approach, okay? I'm into shotgun approaches, but not on this project. I think we need to take a step back as a city council and as a committee of the whole and look at this a little differently, okay? My envisioning of what we need to do is, I think, first off, we need to get city staff in here with maps and drawings and charts and everything else that show us how these two systems function. I think we need to, as a city council, understand how they're supposed to function. I think we need to understand how they functioned on June 23rd, or July 23rd. I think we need to understand if they've identified any issues in those areas. I think that's the first step in my mind. And then I think the second step that we need to do is then to bring in a firm, whether it's Mr. Burke's firm or whether it's another firm, to review what they've come forward with as far as the city council, as far as a staff, to help us to understand whether or not what they're looking at is the same thing, so that we can get a confirmation that we're in agreement as to where we're going. Right now we're focused on the south end, and I appreciate that. It's my ward. I appreciate the fact that we're focused on the south end, but we've got issues on Pine Street. We've got issues all over this town where we had flooding. It's not an area where it's just one simple little thing. I think we need to look at the holistic view of what we're doing rather than let's piecemeal it and let's say, okay, we had the loudest crowd down in the 7th Ward. We had the meeting down in the 7th Ward, so let's get everybody, and here I am, the 7th Ward alderman, saying we've got to focus on the rest of the city. I should be saying this is great, we're focused on the 7th Ward, but the reality is we need to focus on the city, not just the 7th Ward, because if we do something here, sitting on the safety committee for a long time, if we change parking in one area, it affected parking in another area. If we change something that happens in the 7th Ward, it could affect something that happens in another area of the town. So let's make sure that we get the big picture. So I guess what I'm looking for is some type of structure to put this together so that we're not, I mean, I appreciate all of the comments and all of the things that all the aldermen have sent in as far as recommendations, and I think they're great things for us to look at. But I think what we need to do is, I think Alderman Bram said it the best, we need to do a comprehensive review of the sanitary and the storm sewer system in the city of Elmhurst, and that includes the entire city of Elmhurst, not just the 7th Ward, because we had a problem down there. And I'm concerned that we got so focused on the fact that we had a pump station that there were questions about that we're not focused on the fact that there have been flooding issues throughout this town for years. I mean, there's no question it's probably been since the town was founded, but the reality is that we've seen an increase in the number of flooding issues in the last few years. So we need to look at it and figure out what that solution is. And I think for us to do our job as a council and to do it right, we need to understand from staff how the system was designed to work. And is it meeting those capacities before we actually start moving forward and saying, well, let's put a Band-Aid over here and let's put a Band-Aid over here. We need to understand that. We need to get some recommendations from the staff as far as what they think we could do to improve the situation, and then we need to have those verified by an outside group. And if staff doesn't have the time, then we need to bring in that outside group. But as a council, we need to sit down and look at the qualifications of any consultant, and not, Mr. Burke, don't take this as an insult. I believe that it's our responsibility to determine who that consultant should be. I think that we need to make sure that we've brought in the person who is the most independent, who can give us the best recommendations. And I'm not saying that you can't, Mr. Burke. I'm just saying that we just need to make sure that we've done our due diligence as a council. And I feel like right now what we're doing is kind of, let's put a Band-Aid over here because they're screaming the loudest here. Let's put a Band-Aid over here because they're going to be the next ones to scream. I want to make sure that we turn proactive, and if there's things that can be done, we come up with a plan on how to do them. I don't know what those things are right now. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know we've got I&I issues. I know we've got overhead sewer issues. I know we've got, lift station maybe potential issues. I don't know what the solutions are right now. I don't even know what the engineers that we have on staff would recommend to be the best thing and the first thing to do. I want to hear those recommendations so that we can come up with a plan that then we can help to prioritize and say this is what we want to move forward with. So I'm sorry I dog walked from this, but I really think we need to do that. So,
Thank you, Alderman. There will be no shotgun approach to this. The BEMIS, the Harzard study from 96, was it, Mr. Burke? 96 study was a stormwater management plan that was put in place. And ironically, after reading through this, and you've been an alderman up here for many years, these same problem streets are in the Harzard study. So this isn't new. We're going to have to deal with stuff that has been there for many years that really should have been addressed. Many things were addressed. For instance, Salt Creek was addressed, stayed in the creek, thank God. We would have had Armageddon on the south end of town. Berms were put in. But the Harzard study, I think, will be a good starting point, because a lot of those same problem streets, Pine, I went through them already, Washington, Prospect, Swain, all of these streets, many of those are mentioned in that study from 96. Some things were implemented, many things were not. So I think that's a good start. And having somebody like Mr. Burke, and it'll be a decision the council will make, I think. But I think after we see his credentials, I think it's important that we get started with an engineering firm. In fact, Mr. Borchard isn't here today, but he said, Pete, we have so many things going on in this town that we need a stormwater guru. And in my opinion, in DuPage County's opinion, and Oak Brook and Addison and Westchester just brought Mr. Burke in. Many of these problematic areas have brought in this man to solve their problems. So,
and let me make it clear, I didn't say that he was not the right person.
Right.
I just said that it's our responsibility as a council to make sure that we see a resume and we understand
Absolutely.
that we've got the best qualified person.
You got
That's
it,
all I'm saying.
definitely. But there'll be no shotgun approaches. We got a plan that was in place since 96 that needs to be updated, and we will update it, and we'll do whatever we can to fix these problems. And I would encourage council, hopefully we'll get a couple more in, and then we'll open it up to the public. Anybody else? Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I don't want to get into, a back and forth, but I do take a little issue with the shotgun approach reference. Last week, going back to the town hall meeting, the mayor, Mr. Borchard, I remember Alderman Nybo even saying something that we needed to get the people of Jackson-Saylor an answer as to whether that pump was running. So that's what this is. Last week at the city council meeting, it was requested by aldermen that we have this session with Mr. Burke here so that the whole council could ask questions, the public could ask questions, and that's what's being done. So I wouldn't characterize anything being asked tonight as a shotgun approach, because we asked for it a week ago. And then also in reference to the rest of the agenda, and it was also a suggestion by Alderman to do a committee of the whole because there were so many referrals made to council. So I don't look at this as a shotgun approach. You know, I think the plan is going to unfold. There are several good ideas that have been floated, but I think we need to be careful about what we say up here, quite honestly, because it will be taken and it will be run with. And I think we need to be very careful with that. And what is happening right now is what was requested by the council last week. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Healy. Alderman Nybo?
Well, I think Alderman Mulliner makes a lot of sense what he's just suggested, and I actually think this conversation that we're having right now is very helpful, because I think we kind of are putting in a structure in place. I mean, his idea about having staff come in and doing like an education session for us as to how everything worked makes a lot of sense. But it makes even more sense if we have an engineer already retained. And I agree with him. We're not going to select Mr. Burke just because, you know, we like what he says, although I think he says wonderful things, and I'm familiar with him enough to be very supportive of bringing him on board. But I think any engineer should come here and say, here's what I can do for you. Here's the services I can offer. You know, based on my review, you know, here are some things you guys might want to look at, and here's, you know, how working with me would be. You know, here's how we operate. Here's my firm. An introduction. I think that's fair to have a presentation, but I think we need to have that engineer on board with us before we go too far, because I can see us operating on 3 different tracks. I can see us, the council, getting the information from staff and then continuing to have these discussions ourselves. I can see a citizens task force taking that same information and then going and having their own conversation and coming back to us at some point saying, well, you know, here's what we think. And I could see the engineer taking all that information, the same information that we get, hearing our questions, hearing our citizens' questions, and then, you know, coming back with its own set of recommendations. So I think having the engineer on board sooner rather than later is important, but I think there should be an opportunity to have that in a more formal manner. But I think we're developing a structure right here as we talk.
Yeah, you're absolutely on target. That's exactly the concept.
Very good. Alderman Shea?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just ask Mr. Hughes just a quick question. We did an independent study. We had an independent study done for the Pine Street area. The gentleman said that it would be about $450,000 approximately to fix their area, either run another pipe along the existing pipes or just replace a new pipe. Now, would that interfere with, and how would that impact the rest of the area, or is that something we could do right away since that we've had the study, we already got the results, what could be done? I mean, could we work on their area immediately?
My recollection is, and I have to reread that, I believe that $400,000 took the level of protection from a 5-year to a 10-year. So could it be done? Absolutely. Funding would have to be lined up for it, and you would have that level of protection. Would that have kept all of them dry in this past event? I'd have to run the evaluation, but if that 450 only gets you to 10 years, a 10-year level of protection, then I would say there would still have been some flooding.
Very good. Anybody else? Alderman Pezza? And I'm probably opening up to the public here shortly. So
Just quick, I just want to say I really appreciate Mr. Burke being here this evening. I've learned an awful lot just in this couple of hours myself. I could probably sit here for days asking questions and learning, and I think that's what we all need to do, the residents and the council alike. So I see absolutely nothing wrong with what we did this evening. I think it was an excellent exercise because I'm always thirsty for more knowledge, especially with things like this I know nothing about. And I'm just thinking perhaps after the public comment, I think I'd like to make a motion that we take public comment and that we actually put these on hold another week or two, because I don't know that we actually have enough knowledge to make decisions on these referrals. And like I said, I'd come every day and listen and become educated. I'd even like to take up the offer from that conservation design firm that volunteered to give a free seminar. Anyone that's willing to come here and educate me and the public and all of us, I think it could only be helpful. So I don't want to jump into anything, but I also know we need to do something as soon as possible. So I guess I'd like to make a motion that we take public comment and then reassess these at another time when we have more information.
There's no need for a motion to take public comment. We're going to go to that right now, so.
No, I'm saying to make a motion that after the public comment, we table these rest of the items for another meeting when we have more information.
Okay. Yeah, the only one I would ask, and this is based on requests from the alderman, would be the overhead sewer program as far as diverting funds for the next council meeting. They have a report go to the council meeting, because I think those people, I think we have 50 people on that list already, and with more signing up daily, that are looking for help desperately so that this doesn't happen in their house again. And I think based on what I've heard from Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Healy, Alderman Wagner, that particular program, we might want to make a recommendation to the council for the next council meeting. The others, I would probably agree, unless I hear otherwise, that we might want to table. And actually allow the task force to work on a lot of those as well, too. Task force, we've got a lot of applications in. We should hopefully have that task force assigned within the next 3 weeks. And task force will be working with staff. Hopefully we'll have some aldermen assigned to each subcommittee, and as well as whatever engineering firm we end up going with, whether it's Mr. Burke or another third party. Collaboration from the folks on Washington, from the folks on Pine. I know we've got many applications in, and these people want to sit at the table. I see Mr. Wool out in the audience, and I know he's definitely wants a seat at the table to make sure that these problems are addressed. Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really want to delay public comment opportunities much longer, but I do want to say that I think that Alderman Mullner's on the right track, that we really need to have a broad overview and approach this from a comprehensive planning standpoint so that we can assign our dollars to these programs and fixes and adjustments and whatever we decide is the best way in the most cost-effective and logical way possible. That I don't want to say I think this fix is the one we should start with, because I don't know that it's going to be the most effective use of city money and of residents' money. And I think Alderman Mullner's on the right track, as is Alderman Nybo, that we're developing a process here, and what I'm hearing everybody else say is that there's a lot more information we need to gather, a lot of opinions that I want to hear. So I'm not ready yet to say that we should be moving forward with any one of these particular recommendations. That I think another committee of the whole meeting is a great opportunity for us to start gathering information so that we can prioritize all of these referrals and fold them into our planning process.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Alderman Brown, real quick, and then I'm going to open it up to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this is in response to your recent comments, since you were requesting or asking for feedback on that. I agree with Alderman Mulliner. I agree with Alderman Gutenkopf, which he just stated. I think we need to be careful not to jump before we know where we're going to land here. And what I mean by that is, you know, the piecemeal approach, we got to be very, very careful with. I think a comprehensive study is the right direction to go. I would hasten to do any of these recommendations before we have further information. So I agree with Alderman Pez's recommendation to hold off on these recommendations for tonight. There's a lot of questions on each of these recommendations that are still to be asked as well as answered. So my request is that we follow, and if needed, I'll second that motion, to hold off on all of the recommendations by the various aldermen on the council.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, I will now open the discussion up to the public. We don't have a sign-in sheet today because we didn't have this on the agenda, but I do think that the residents deserve a chance to speak and maybe ask some questions of staff, of our engineer who's been hired to look at the pumping stations and certify that they were working, et cetera. So at this time, I would ask for people to raise their hand. I'll call on you. At the time I call on you, if you please rise. We have microphones to my right and to my left. If you could please state your name and address. Because we have a lot of people here, if we can keep it to 3 minutes, that would be helpful. And again, if you would like to direct questions, we will take questions because this is a committee of the whole meeting, and we're opening this up. So I'm going to first call on the woman in the back with the blue sweater. If you could please come up and state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor DeCiani. Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. First, I want to thank you, Mayor DeCiani, Alderman Mulliner, and Alderman Shea for reminding everyone that it's not only the problems on the south side of Elmhurst, but there's problems on this side of the tracks as well. So thank you very much for remembering us. I'd also like to say that I would like the problems on the south side fixed as much as I would like the ones fixed in my own neighborhood. Next, I wanted to thank you, Mr. Burke, for your report. I think that maybe it's because I lived with engineers my whole life, but you did explain it to a non-engineer fairly well, and I appreciate your taking the time to speak in our language. I also wanted to follow up on something that Alderman Nybo said, which was with regards to making sure that the communication is improved. And in addition to the front porch, you took a lot of email addresses when you took the forms in, and you said it was about 700 forms at last week's city council meeting. So you have about 700 very interested Elmhurst citizens on this issue, and it's a great way to spread the word. So I think that you should try to remember to use that as well, because and also even to remind them of things like this, where you're changing kind of your format instead of your little subgroups or your little committees having the big committee, because I think that that's very helpful for people to know that you're all trying to address the issue. And so I try to spread the word around my neighborhood, but I think that if you reach out to the people. Those who don't have email will be able to spread the information around their neighborhoods, because there's a lot of interest out there. There's 3 Facebook groups dedicated to Elmhurst flooding out there. There's blogs. There's all kinds of stuff out there. So get the information out as many ways as you can, because people are extremely interested. So, and then I did have kind of a question, which is, if you have like a basement bathroom, and then you had, and it was a home constructed in 2001, so it had overhead sewers. It never had the other kind of sewers. Would that be something that contributed to first floor water coming in through the kitchen sink? Whereas we live in the house next door, we have almost identical houses, but we didn't experience any first floor?
It doesn't sound like it. It may be some other clear water contribution between the overhead sewer and the house.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else for public forum? Ms. Laredo?
I thank the aldermen, can't remember all your names, for taking things slowly.
Marilyn, real quick, can you give your name
I'm
and your
Marilyn
address?
Aredo. I live at 912 Sailor, very close to the lift station. I feel tonight that your explanation was to comfort all the people in the 7th Ward and explain what happened. You failed to mention that the June flood, what happened at the corner of Jackson and Sailor, there was mud that came up on the sewers. And is Mr. Hughes here? Okay. He had people there washing that street, correct, Mr. Hughes? And it went on the grass and everything else. So my question to you, Mr. Burke, is that because the sewers needed to be routed out too? And that was not maintained? That when we had the storm in June, that this mud came up from the drains on the gutters on the street. I went down there, a neighbor told me she couldn't, the street was blocked, she couldn't turn there. So I went walking there, and there was so much mud on the sidewalk, it was dangerous to walk on it. So explain to me, why was that mud coming up on the street? I know there was a power outage.
First of all, I do not want to evade your question, but on the other hand, I better not guess as to why. There could be a number of causes as to why the mud is coming out or accumulated on the street. I'm not sure if it was from the storm sewer or the sanitary sewer, and Mr. Hughes is shaking his head. He's not sure either. So I can look at it, but I don't want to guess. I don't think that would be wise.
All right. Now, the next thing is, council members, you mentioned overhead sewers to these citizens who are cleaning their basements, and that's an expense that is going to drive them right out of their mind. So I believe, as a 48-year resident of Elmhurst, and when I went through a 100-year flood, there was a task force, and Jerry Wolin, some of you might know him, worked diligently on that, and they worked slowly, and they got a lot of things done, believe me. So this idea, before we get into overhead sewers, the city has to take care of things. We can have overhead sewers, and it's going to inadequate infrastructure. And we could still get back up. Then what? Mr. Burke, am I right or wrong?
You're right from the perspective overhead sewers will not take care of the entire problem.
So, there we go. So we can't rush into anything, but we need to really, and it's the 21st century. We've got a lot of intelligent people in Elmhurst. Jerry Wolin he's on the board in Oak Brook. He'll come and help us. So let's go very slowly, and let's do what we need to do. I have all my gutters. I have 2 sump pumps. They go in my yard. Every sidewalk that I have is not a solid sidewalk. It's sand-based. When it rains, you can see water. The minute it stops raining, shh. That's natural landscaping. This is our earth wants to take water so it can go in there so that we can, the water cycle you learned in 3rd grade. We don't want it to go in sewers. We don't want these new homes. There's a home on Chandler, brand new home. All the gutters, everything goes into the storm sewer. I passed the house, and they're flooded in their basement, and they got a 9-foot basement. Explain that to me. When you get a 7-inch rain and the storm sewer is full, and I'm not an engineer, okay? Common sense, and that gets full, and you're pumping in water there, you're hitting a Berlin Wall. That's what happened to me in '87. My sump pumper was, recycling water like this. Okay? Goes in the ground and absorbs it all. Okay? Work on your ground, people. Compost, make it ready so that it can take the rain. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Marilyn. Anyone else for public forum? The woman here on the aisle with the, there we go. I'll get you next.
I'm Virginia Wisdom of 1517 Marquette Avenue in Naperville, Illinois. I'm your neighbor from Naperville, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening, especially since I realize this is not your normal and customary procedure. And I am also surprised that there was the break from normal and customary procedure in that initially there was a finance committee meetings that was advertised on the website as being held tonight, and I did call and confirm last week that there was going to be a finance committee meeting, and I had come thinking I was going to attend that. And while I am interested in some of the items that I understood were going to be discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, the broader issue that brought me here is the United States Constitution, and specifically the First Amendment. And I had talked with Darlene Heslop. I'm aware that at the last Finance Committee meeting that she was thrown out of the meeting for rolling her eyes. And I am here in hopes that not only will I be able to support her right as a citizen to attend a public meeting, but also in hopes that eye rolling or other facial expressions do not become the new norm in America for throwing the public out of public meetings. It seems obvious to any thinking person that facial expressions are sort of a natural reflex and therefore would be covered and protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution of America. And as the late Reverend Martin Luther King stated much more eloquently than I could ever state, attempts by governments to make laws that are unconstitutional, that are such as, and also court injunctions, and use of color of law to deny American citizens their civil rights, all of these are eventually overturned. But in the meantime, there is a great deal of damage that is done, not only to the community, but to the credibility of the governmental body that does this, and also to the individuals who sit on that governmental body. So if you are currently considering writing an ordinance to make it illegal to roll your eyes in Elmhurst, I would urge you not to do so. The eyes of the world are upon you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss. Anyone else for public forum? We even let Naperville come and talk. They, similar to Miss Heslop, they don't pay taxes, but we let everybody talk here. So, the woman in the aisle here, thank you.
Hi, good evening. Deanne Mazzocchi from 156 South Sunnyside. A couple questions for Mr. Burke, or Dr. Burke. First, okay, so we have a sanitary system and we have a sewer system, or storm system rather. Was there any evidence that any of the flooding for the July 23rd or 24th was caused because there was insufficient capacity for the stormwater part of the system?
I can pretty much guarantee that the storm sewer system that you have within the city of Elmhurst did not have capacity to take the 7+ or more inches of rainfall.
Did not have the capacity?
Did not.
Okay, and is that something that can be, why is it that it doesn't have that capacity?
As I mentioned before, the design standards that we had when I say we, I know I look like I was here when they started the community, but the design standards when they started sizing storm sewers are not to the level they are today. We have computers, we have rainfall data, we have 100 years of information that tells us what we should or should not be doing with stormwater. So it was probably designed with a level of protection that under today's conditions would be considered very low. It would be much smaller than if we designed it again today. So that's the reason why if you wanted, we could, any engineering firm could design it to the 7± inches of rainfall that fell. I can guarantee you're not going to like the answer, you're not going to like the cost for providing 7 inches of rainfall in that short period of time, that level of protection. I can guarantee not only the alderman and the mayor, but also the residents. So the storm sewer didn't have capacity.
Okay, and similarly, when it comes to the ability to handle that capacity, is it because people have some pumps that are going into the storm drains, or is it just because you had a freak situation where you had a sheer huge volume of water that accumulated in 24 hours that created a lot of the problems?
You had over 1 billion gallons of rainfall hitting the town. Now some of it, like the woman that spoke earlier, some of it went into your yard. And then a lot of it started sheet flowing everywhere. So with all that rainfall volume, the runoff was too great to be accommodated within the storm sewers and within the pump stations that are the exit points for the storm sewers.
And just within the ground itself? And just within the ground itself, as in the fact that there are many homes that have some pumps that are going into the storm systems, that's not going to make one difference versus another as to whether people were going to get basements flooded,
That's
given the
correct.
volume of water. Okay. So then, in terms of the particular, the Jackson lift area, if I understand, you said that that normally that particular station, I think you had a slide on it, that actually the one that you've got up there, that you said that that baseline is roughly around, what, 1 million gallons a day?
1 million gallons per day, approximately.
Okay, so then when that graph spikes up, how many millions more gallons per day?
In excess of 3.
Okay, so you basically had a 3 to 4-fold increase in the volume at that particular station.
Volume and flow rate.
Okay, so the volume and flow, was that wasn't because you've got more sewage all of a sudden going into the system, it's purely because you've got the rainwater going into the sanitary system.
The clear water that's starting as rainwater and finding its way into the sanitary sewer.
Okay, and the main reasons why you're getting this rainwater going into that sanitary system is because you identified 2 things. First, when you've got older homes, they've got insufficient draining or improper draining where you've got things that normally should be going into the storm system going into the sanitary system. That was one reason you said
Correct.
you had the problem. Okay. Then another issue you said is that trees might be actually tapping into some of the lines that are going into that particular system.
Into the sanitary sewer service.
Okay. If you had to put, are there any others that I'm missing that you would consider to be a significant contributor to getting some of the clean water into the sanitary system?
There could be situations where you have the area drains I mentioned earlier, which would be a small drain or a storm sewer inlet that would be connected to the sanitary sewer. That's less likely, but that's a possible cause.
Okay, well, if you had to put the odds on, the 3 times more amount that was contributing to the sanitary system, what would you say that's coming from? Is it coming from improperly installed sump pumps? Is it coming from trees tapping the roots? If you had to put percentages on it, roughly where would they be?
I'm not, like I said before, I don't want to evade, but I don't want to guess either. The situation's a little bit different in every type of the community, and it can vary from block to block. So I don't want to try to guess as to what the contributions are.
Okay, so it could be that one block, maybe the problem is that they've got a lot of big trees tapping into things, and it could be that a few more blocks over, you've got a string of older houses, and all of those older houses start to overwhelm the system because they've got some of these drains, or they've got the improperly installed sump pumps that are tying into the sanitary system.
Those scenarios are all possible.
Okay, and are there any other ones that you're aware of that you can think of that might be materially contributing to the clean water going into the sanitary system?
There's other sources that you could have, such as leaking sanitary sewer manholes, lids, covers on manholes that could be leaking. Those are possible sources as well.
Okay. And now I think that you also said that it was around 1:30 in the morning when that particular Jackson Street facility got overwhelmed, and they wound up having to pump things actually into the storm system from the sanitary.
Between somewhere about 1:30, yes.
Okay, and the reason why that was is because the volume at that point in time was so large that basically they needed to use the storm system as an emergency outlet, if you will.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you said that it was your understanding that ComEd was in fact supplying electricity to that facility at the time?
Yes.
Okay, but you said that there is a generator for the 4 pumps that are there.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, if the generator is operational, is it going to be able to run all 4 pumps, or can it just run 1 pump, 2 pumps, 3 pumps? As part of your diagnostics, were you able to evaluate that?
It can handle the 3 largest pumps.
So the 288
Two
horsepower.
large ones and the variable.
And then the 20.
You can't, they don't use, that's the maximum they can use.
Okay, I mean, is there any value to upgrading the generator so that it could run all 4 pumps at the same time if need be?
I don't know if the generator is a limiting factor at that point in time.
Okay, and then, so in terms of a long-term solution to the problem, would it be fair to say that the more some of the older homes in the area can start converting over so that they've got a more, lack of a better phrase, that they've got more of the type of system for handling stormwater and rainwater that newer houses do, that in the long run, that's something that's going to be able to help this problem a lot?
That's going to have an impact on this specific lift station.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public forum? This gentleman here? There you go.
Good evening. I know it's a little late, so I appreciate Alderman Molnar comments. I live in 363 North Richland Avenue, so I'm north of North Avenue. And unfortunately, I did experience also a sewer backup. And Dr. Burke, I wanted to just check with you, will it be a fair characterization to say that the sewer system during that time collapsed in the basically most city of Elmhurst?
Real quick, before Christopher Burke speaks, can you state your name and address?
My name is Carlos Chavez.
And what's your address there on Ridgeland?
363 North Ridgeland Avenue.
363 North Ridgeland Avenue. It's right around the corner from my 359 Highland address that I grew up at. So go ahead. Bungalow or no? What kind of house are you in? Bungalow?
It's a split level.
Split level? Okay. Mr. Burke?
Mr. Chavez, I have no information whatsoever that leads me to the belief that the sewer collapsed in any portion of the city.
So all the sewer backups throughout the city of Elmhurst is a natural thing that happens all the time?
It's only natural. That term I would not use. The sewer backup is a function of more water getting into the sewer than the sewer can convey.
So isn't that the system collapsed indeed? I mean, if the system fails, then isn't it beyond the capacity it can handle?
I'm sorry. When you said collapse, I meant from the term. I thought you were referring to the fact that the system itself, the pipe collapsed and no longer. I understand what you're talking about. Failure. Yes.
Yes. So it is a fair characterization that the system failed.
From the perspective that it was unable to convey all the water that was trying to get into it.
Another thing that, again, I don't have to be an engineer. I think as city residents, our concern is not to be experts in water management. We leave that to experts such as yourself. But one of the things that we want to live with is with the fact that obviously the city is looking for having an adequate sewer and rain system. But what I heard today is that indeed there could be a 7 inches of water system that can be handled, but will be too expensive.
I would suggest that the price tag for taking care of the storm water for the 7 inches of rainfall would be very expensive.
Just one idea, and again, I will finish with that. And it has to do just for things to think. And again, it's sometimes the best ideas don't have to cost money. One of the things that I discovered, obviously, as part of this wonderful endeavor was that there was a rider in my policy for home insurance for homeowner that did not cover sewer backup. What my insurance told me, it was the responsibility of the city, but perhaps one of the things that the city can negotiate for many of the residents of Elmhurst is to have a comprehensive sewer and flood policy that we can buy from the city. Perhaps if you said, we represent, 10,000 families in the city of Elmhurst, what kind of rate can you provide us? Again, it will not ameliorate the fact that, every 5 or 10 years we will have a big rain and many of the families will be affected. Not that we plan to do, whether is the causes, again, is for you experts. But the end result is that the economic damage and emotional damage is tremendous for us. So if at least we can remove the emotional side out of it, because that will not be able to be bought with any kind of money, but at least if you guys can look and, with the buying power, put some kind of bid out there that's saying, we're interested in buying comprehensive policy for our citizens. We will buy them. We will pay for them. You will negotiate them for us at a better price. So at least when something happens and we are not covered, then at least, we know that we don't have to bring out of pockets thousands of dollars just because there was a little clause that was not covered in our policies. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very good point. And we were out today with FEMA, just sort of record. FEMA was out here, IEMA, DuPage County Homeland Security. Years ago, I used to sell insurance for my father many years ago. Years ago, you had to live in a floodplain to buy flood insurance. Now FEMA now allows you to buy flood insurance through State Farm, through Allstate, through American Family, all the different carriers. and you don't have to live in a floodplain. So anybody could buy flood insurance now, for the record, even if you don't live in a floodplain, just so you know that. So that it is offered through the federal government, through your local agent, whether he's State Farm, Allstate, American Family, whoever he might be, just for the record. So having an insurance background, I figured I'd nip that one right away. Anybody else? And we're looking for FEMA money to help pay for whatever this is going to cost, once the task force assembles, and we figure out, put a price tag on what these fixes are going to be. We're going to be looking for federal dollars, state dollars, but federal will probably be the biggest. We've got a lot of capital projects, stimulus projects that are for infrastructure, and this is infrastructure, and we'll be looking for those dollars. So next, gentleman in the back there with the, here we go.
My name is Larry Roberts. I live at 120 Avon Road. Avon is one block east of Pine Street, and we were inundated not unlike Pine was, and we normally get inundated like they do. I appreciate the City Council for the open forum. I appreciate Mr. Burke coming in with some very good information. I came in late, but I still learned a whole lot of good information. And Mr. Burke, I wanted to ask you something. I'm coming here as an advocate for the overhead sewer program, and I'm hoping that the City Council will find itself to fund it, because I think it is a good thing for homeowners in general, although it may not fix the total problem within the city. But from a homeowner protection standpoint, I think one person can, by helping us fund it, can help with your home. Okay, to make it a little bit safer place, a little bit nicer place to be in, hopefully over time. Now, when I talk to sewer contractors that were coming in to quote on this program, or quote on putting an overhead sewer, I live in a very old home. We don't even have a floor drain in our floor. They assumed at one point in time it was probably a dirt floor, and they poured concrete underneath it. But I'm getting sewer, and you can smell it inside the water. We got 2 feet of water in the basement. And what was explained to me, and I want to bring this out to you and see if it makes sense to you, because it seems to make sense to me, is that we have obviously old clay pipe. The main stack goes into the floor. There's old clay pipe that starts, and we've had it scoped, and it's pretty obvious. Goes out and runs out. And those are 2-foot clay, 6-inch or whatever they were. They're cemented together 90 years ago or whatever it is. The ground moves. There's trees going around. All those seams crack and open up. And what he's basically saying to me is that that's a good source of clear water getting into the sanitary system. Not, I do have a sump pump system inside my interior basement, which we put in last year from the 2008 flood that came in. We decided to go that route instead of overhead sewer that year. Wish I'd done both, unfortunately. And he's saying that what happened was that sewer system got so charged that the pressure built up underneath there, and sewage basically just floods out from those gaps coming back. And my laundry tub was full in the basement. That's the only thing I have in the basement going down there. I don't have a toilet or anything. And that's inundating underneath the foundation going into my drain tile. It was just pouring out of my sump pump, so that was adding to the problem. Does that seem to make sense? It seems to make sense to me.
Yes, it does.
And even though we can't say that amount of clear water getting into the sewer system is causing it to completely back up, it certainly doesn't help matters. And I think a good program would be to go through and make sure, house to house or whatever you have to do to make sure that people aren't illegally dumping into the sanitary system and pouring that clear water in there. Because if we do have an old sanitary system, certainly keeping as much clear water out of it as possible. And maybe a study, or maybe you have studied this and I didn't hear it, is the sanitary system adequate for the 100 gallons per person per day for the residents of Elmhurst in its state now without any clear water coming in? Does it seem to be adequate for just sanitary?
I've not done detailed calculations, but based on the sizes that they have and the increasing area, I would say, and the fact that over the last many years, many decades, you would have seen upgrades in the sanitary sewer system if it was unable to handle the normal flow.
Okay.
And the staff is nodding their head in affirmative.
So that, if that's being the case, then certainly anything we can do to keep any clear water out of that system seems to be a smart thing to do. And so I just wanted to voice my opinion that I do believe that the overhead program, although it won't fix the entire problem, I think it's a good program for the residents in general. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you, sir. Gentleman on the aisle there?
Hi, my name is Greg Zirkus. I live at 311 West Elm Park Avenue. This is my third time speaking, so a couple things. I work in technology, so I don't know enough about drain pipes. My house is 90 years old. I have gravity. I was affected, so 9 inches of sewer water came in my basement. In technology, when we lay capacity, we do it overwhelmingly, right? A lot of storage, a lot of processing power. When we lay fiber optics across oceans, we use literally 1 million, one half of a % of a million amounts of the capacity of that fiber line, right? Adequate for everything. So that being said, all right, I'm going to read what I wrote. It's a lot easier for me. I like all the comments so far. If you're not a lawyer, you should be. Trial lawyer. I wrote a whole bunch, but I'm going to simplify it. City leaders, I really do appreciate all of this, and Diane, you came to my neighborhood when she knows, so thank you. Mr. Burke, I appreciate you being here, and your presentation was great. So I'm going to say this, though. As city leaders, I just want to remind everybody that the responsibility and cost should not fall upon the residents to install costly, defensive, and invasive measures such as overhead sewers and stopgate valves in and around our homes. I don't mind that, but that's a distributed model. Centralized model is what we have to move to. That's what we should have, and that's what we had 90 years ago when they put this stuff in. So residents right now, as stated earlier, are recovering from costly flood damage, and it was directly related to antiquated infrastructure, which you yourself said. And that infrastructure is not owned by me. It is owned and managed by the city. So our city needs to work with the county, state, and I appreciate that you've met with FEMA and all that. That's phenomenal. So very good. But us as taxpayers as well, we all have to be cognizant of what I said last week or 2 weeks ago about nice-to-have services and core competency services of government. So taxes have to go to those things. We have to update the capacity of the system to adequately and responsibly deal with any storm volume, 7.5 inches in 6 hours. Let's assume, all things being equal, that we had the magic wand and we knew that another 7.5 inches in 6 hours was going to occur in 12 months from now. So before I get to my question on that, I'll continue. The current design is not serving its intended purpose, and a long-term solution needs to be put in place, and let's keep playing out that 12-month thing, so let's make sure we can get to it in the next year. I would suggest a few things. Apply now or reapply for Recovery Act funds. Right, there's money in that big old pool of money, that bucket, so let's go grab some. Rip up our streets, and I hate saying that because I don't like construction, but if you got to rip up our streets, I don't like hearing about us having 10-inch pipes and then go, oh, well, maybe we could put in a 12 or 14. I would prefer us talking 24 or 36-inch pipes. Let's assume capacity is going to get worse, right? That's, again, technology, more overwhelming force. All right. Fix all the piping required, the main lines, do whatever it takes to ensure we have capacity. Expand the water treatment plant, buy out the Ryder facility or whatever is next to it, and expand that out if it can't handle the demand. Dave, one of my neighbors came up with an idea. A house that's in foreclosure on certain blocks that we think is a tear down, go buy it. Buy that house, tear it down, and that becomes the reservoir for that block, right? Just ideas. Finally, divert overflow from plants, from whatever overflow occurs, wherever it goes. Worst case, don't let it come into a house again and get it into the quarry. And I hate saying that because I'm an environmentalist. I have dry wells in my backyard. I've got rain barrels. I'm all for this, but at some point, anything's better than my basement. Anything's better than anybody's basement, right? Never again allow water or sewage to enter our homes. Bottom line, a year from now, nobody wants to look back and say, why didn't the village fix this after the July 2010? We keep referring to this as a 2010 flood. It's really the July 2010 flood, right? I mean, you heard we had some like a month ago or two. So we need a solution, we need it now. So back to my 12-month plan is, if you had a magic wand and you were to wave it, what would you do this year? Forget about distributed stuff. What would you do for the infrastructure of the town to ensure that we could address a 7.5 inches of rain and 6-hour downfall? What would you do?
That's a good question, and the, obviously, assuming that there was infinite number of dollars available, that there was no cap on the dollars?
Not infinite.
Let's just say there was no cap on the dollars. Well, let me just also explain that any work on the stormwater system or the floodplain management system, because they're kind of connected. One, most of the people that flooded because of water standing in the street, that was not because of Salt Creek overtopping its banks like it did before. It was because water couldn't get out. And I say that because there's a lot of permits that are required. And I think that it come no surprise to you that permits for doing anything on any of the sewers takes a long time to obtain, and then it takes a long time to design. Sanitary sewers, you have to go through a process with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. And that takes a finite amount of time. And it's not days, and it's not weeks, and it's months. Not because they're not good people. They're fine, very nice people. But they have a process. There's a number of things they're going to check on any sanitary sewer or water main. But we're not talking about water main. The stormwater aspects are monitored by the county and the state. When the city went back in the 90s and put the levee in, they had to get permits. They had to get permits from the state and the county as to what they could and could not do. I'm boring you with this information, but I just wanted to let you know that in 1 year, it's not something that if you said the design, Mr. Hughes had the design drawings already done, and that the city had all the money available, you'd still have to go through permits, you still have to go to procurement process, and whether or not you could get something in line in a year is extremely doubtful.
So if you indulge me for a moment, just let me rephrase my question. Imagine bureaucracy wasn't a problem, and imagine and imagine that, Dick Durbin and President Obama, and imagine if you again had this magic wand and you had reasonable amounts of money to do reasonable things in the town. What would your 1, 2, and 3 reasonable? I heard the smoke out the houses that might have water. I like that. That sounds very reasonable and cheap to me. Number 2, though, forget about that as a solution to find out the water coming in. Infrastructure improvements, what would you improve? Again, bureaucracy aside, permits aside, forget about permits. Well, they're necessary, I got it, but what would you do if you had the bulldozers today? Because here's one problem, and you don't think anyone heard this 2 weeks ago, is 96 and all these historical things, didn't people say then, here are the top 10 things we ought to do? Maybe you didn't have funding for it at the time, but at least this is what we ought to do. I don't see that anywhere, and I really hope we see that. But what would you do?
Well, in 1996, you did have a plan that outlined it. After a small flood, relatively speaking, in 95, there was a smaller event. But you had an outline of certain projects that were considered worthy by a committee. A committee sat with their engineer and identified certain certain projects. Let me say, the obvious one, I think everybody here says, just make the storm sewers big enough. Just make those storm sewers as big as you can. The difficulty is that you would have to eliminate, when you say bureaucracy, there's a bureaucracy in place to make sure that no one floods you from up above and that you don't flood anybody down below. And so you're limited by the a number of permits as to how much you can pump out. So all these pump stations that you have, there's a bureaucracy and there's a requirement that you can't increase those. So from one perspective, you can make the storm sewers big, really big, not 24, not 36, 66, 72 inch, and bring all the water towards where it wants to go, which is Salt Creek. So you would have a sewer that would have the capacity for your 7.5 inches rain, okay? You are limited to what you can do when you get to Salt Creek by you call it bureaucracy, but it's the regulations that are in place to protect people downstream, just like they're trying to protect people that would otherwise discharge water onto you from upstream.
Okay, that being said, you would agree that at any major situation like we had on July 24th, we might as well fill up the quarry, right? We would fill up every reservoir, every system we have before we let bad things happen to homes. So okay, that was.
Well, that's certainly an option, looking at if there's any residual capacity, as the city did a few years back, to see if there's residual capacity that could be, some waters could be diverted into the quarry. That's certainly an option that may be out there that would be a potential project, as well as trying to find storage in some of the green spaces. There are limited green spaces that are available in the town.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Very good questions. Any other public comment? This woman here down in front here. Please state your name and address if you could, and then.
Sure. My name is Liz Woodmeyer. I live at 908 South Sailor in Elmhurst. I just wanted to, I do have a few questions for Mr. Burke, possibly Mr. Hughes. Start off, though, with addressing council and asking that you would hold off on the overhead sewer program for the time being to analyze what's going on. Not that I'm against it. I am compassionate for my neighbors. I just want to make sure that our money is utilized correctly. My question for Mr. Burke is, starting with in 2008, when the quarry was utilized fully, we were safe. The streets did fill with water. However, I don't recall Washington Avenue going under. I don't recall Swain going down. Spring Road, possibly, not sure. But I just wanted to know the difference with that event versus this one.
The 2008 flood hit to the north. If you recall, it seemed to hover over the O'Hare Airport area, and that band versus what happened in 2010, July of 2010. I know there's two events. July of 2010, which kind of hovered along the extension of what would be 290. The 2008, the reason the quarry filled up was because the water levels on Salt Creek rose to a level that they started spilling over that ledge, which we call weir, and filling up or starting to fill up the quarry. So that's the reason why 2008 waters, and those are waters in the creek that are going into the quarry. They're not waters from town right now. The waters from the creek, the water of the creek is going past the quarry. It gets up to a certain elevation, and it immediately has to spill over into the quarry through a vortex shaft and over a weir. But so that was because the elevations in the Salt Creek got to a certain height.
From rainwater?
From rainwater in the upper watershed, in the areas that contribute runoff, starting up in Schaumburg area, Arlington Heights. Those areas contribute. There's tributaries of Salt Creek. Then you work your way down to Wooddale, Itasca, and those areas.
Okay, so is that something that other communities added to the creek?
Those communities, just like you adding to the creek, they add to the creek naturally. When I put naturally, when we change the landscape, the word natural kind of goes out the window. But they are naturally tributary and naturally drain to the creek, just like half the city of Elmhurst drains naturally to Salt Creek, and half the city goes to Addison Creek. Addison Creek to the east.
Okay, thank you. And then another question I have is regarding the current event on July 23rd. About 11 p.m., well, about 10 p.m., thunder started, lightning, pounding, raining, not hard, raining, harder, not hard, you know. About 11 p.m. to 12:30, rain gauges in the area indicate that we received between 3.5 and 4 inches of rain at that hour. Not referring to a 7-year event or I apologize, for a 6-year hour storm, referring to a 2-hour storm receiving between 2.5 to 3.5 inches of rain in that time frame. At the height of your flow chart, right at the height of that storm when the rain hit the ground, is when the Sailor Jackson Station was inundated with clear water, you're calling it. Now I lost my train of thought. So that is the exact time when the neighbors on the corner reported the street backing up at about 12 o'clock p.m. to 12:15. About 15 minutes after that, my phone started ringing. I received calls from the north side of town, the up by Prospect, friends on Prospect, of my children, I should say, friends of theirs that live by East End Park. Mom, my friend over by East End Park has 6 feet of water in her basement. Mom, my friend on the corner has 6 feet of water in her basement. Mom, my friend 2 blocks west on the other side of us has 3 feet of water in their basement. So what did I do? I said, kids, empty the family room. Okay? We didn't have that problem. We weren't devastated. We were fortunate. I've been very scared. So I wonder how you would explain, that rain event. So our sewers, in other words, don't even handle 3.5 inches of rain?
3.5 inches rain in that 2 hours?
Yes.
That may be an intensity that exceeds the capacity of your storm sewer. Now you're talking about the sanitary sewer, which doesn't have any capacity for, or has limited capacity, I should say, limited capacity for any storm. It's not designed based on a storm because the clear water is not supposed to get into it.
I am talking about the sanitary station because we're talking that the sanitary station filled up with storm water. So I'm confused as to with all these sewers and all this, we don't have the capacity for 3 to 4 inches of rain is what I'm learning.
Okay. Now, the storm sewer, let's just talk the storm sewer just for a second, and you started seeing the water in your street fill up. If that pump station right up there had 10 times the capacity, it's not doing anything to the water in your street.
Okay.
The water in your street has nothing to do with that lift station. That lift station isn't supposed to be taking any storm water. We know it does. We've established that tonight, that it's taking clear water. But that has no relation. That elevation of the street is that storm water, the water that's coming down the roads, not going into basements or sump pumps and things like that, coming down the roads, coming off your grass and the other area, and going to the low spot. All the storm water is going to go to the low spot.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I do have a few more. Is that okay? Sure. And you said that at about 1:30 on the 23rd, July 23rd storm, they had to activate the maximum pumps. Where do they start those engines up? How do they turn those pumps on?
There's a motor control, just like the other pumps there. There's a motor. It sounds, if we were standing here, the motor probably sounds like a fan in our bedroom, probably not too much more than that.
So that goes on by itself?
They push a button and they go to the station, as I said, about 1:30.
They push a button at which house?
At which house?
Yes, please.
At the lift station at Saylor and Jackson.
At 1:30, there was a man there that pushed a button?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Okay. Did you come in rowboat? That is what's concerning about all of the residents in the area. The street was surrounded with residents standing out there. The police came by. The police came by to dig a man out of his car. He said it was like this all over. Was it 1:30 in the morning? So this would be 1:30, July 24th.
Correct. That pump will not go on if someone doesn't push that button. So we have to close one valve,
okay, thank you.
open another valve, and then we can hit the button.
That's completely different than what we've been told. So there we talk about the trust with the citizens every time we speak, and now we're in public forum, and we have the independent person researching this for us. Alderman, thank you.
Okay, real quick, Alderman Gutenkopf, go ahead.
I think maybe there's a little confusion about which pump is what. Because what I think I understood Mike Hughes to say is at 1:30, what they did was they turned on this bypass that sends sewage into the storm system directly so that it doesn't go to the wastewater treatment plant, that all the pumps were working at the sanitary lift station, but at 1:30 there was so much water at the sanitary lift station that they sent extra straight to the creek without going to the wastewater treatment plant, and that's the one that they've been saying all along they came out and turned on at 1:30, but the sanitary lift station was working. Isn't that correct, Mike? And I think maybe I'd appreciate it if you would clarify that there's a couple of different systems going on.
Yeah,
Okay.
I could certainly do that. It is a little confusing. It's an involved system. There are 2 small pumps that handle the daily flows every day. Those are probably running today. When those get exceeded, those 2 cut out and the 2 large pumps kick in. So we have 2 large pumps running, and the 2 other small pumps go idle.
But that's automatic.
That's automatic. Yes, thank you. Good point of clarification. That's automatic. We can restart one of the small pumps, close a valve that used to go to the sanitary, open one that goes to the storm, and we can turn that one on manually, and that will go out to the storm sewer. That is an emergency sanitary overflow that we only activate when we absolutely have to. We have to report it to the EPA. There's requirements on that. But that pump itself, every other thing is automatic, but that pump itself takes a manual operator
And that
to start
pump
it.
is located at Jackson and the Creek? Is that
No,
the?
that's it. Go to the you screen that. Yeah, those are the 4 pumps there. 2 are small, 2 are large. They're all in that lift station.
Okay, so at the Jackson and Sailor pumping station, there's 1 pump that you push a button, is what you're telling me.
Right. It's automatic in normal circumstances. When it's a regular
Okay.
daily flow, the 2 small pumps
When it's maximized.
are running. When those get exceeded, they cut out, and the 2 large ones start. Again, that goes to that capacity, the limitation of the pipe. So that's why those cut out. But we can valve it off to another pipe and pump it out of there to help keep the wet well down, which is what's impacting the rest of the system upstream and directly affecting basement backups.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question regarding the Jackson Storm Station. This would be located right at the creek, is that right?
Correct.
At that station, did I hear you tonight say that that does not have an automatic switch? We have 2 feeds, 2 ComEd feeds at that station, but no generator.
Correct.
Does that have an automatic switch? I heard tonight.
Yeah, that works automatically, yes.
That works automatically?
Correct. Once there's a gravity bypass, that it flows by gravity most times of the day.
Do you know about when that was put in?
What
year that automatic switch was installed?
Probably 1989, that station was updated.
October 26, 2006, maybe? We'll take a look at that later, I guess. I saw that you actually made the request in October of '06 for the automatic switch. Tonight, I heard you say there was no automatic switch over there. So, again, I'm feeling confused, but
I
Yeah,
don't recall making that. I wasn't in charge of it in 2006.
Thank you. You weren't?
Oh, for that one? Yeah, I don't recall if that happened or not. It may have been a repair, too. In the late 80s,
I thought you asked for the
early
switch.
90s, all of the lift stations were upgraded. I wasn't directly involved with that project, but there was a lot of upgrading. Whether something had damaged and was replaced in '06,
Like
I don't know.
at Utley Station as well?
I'd have to look into it.
Okay, thanks. And then, as far as the force main, are we already budgeted for that?
Yes.
And where does that money come from?
That's from the MUF, the Municipal Utility Fund. It's your sanitary fees that you pay every month.
Okay. Was it, okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public forum? Ms. Tranter. Name and address, please, and then...
Ann Tranter, 512 West Belden, Elmhurst, Illinois.
Thank you.
Couple of things. First, a gold star to Alderman Healy for showing up to the sustainable stormwater management program at Wilder Mansion. I thought that was wonderful that you showed up to support that event. Then I have a couple of questions I just need some help with. I'm not sure who to go to for this. I guess maybe I'll direct it to Mike Kopp. But what I'd like is there a way that I can get a copy of your presentation this evening so I can review it? I kind of missed the first half, and I'm really genuinely interested in the information, so if you could share that with me, I'd appreciate it.
We'll have
Is
that
that
posted
possible?
online, absolutely. We can post it online, right? Yeah, it'll be on the website probably tomorrow.
Yeah,
so,
okay, that's great.
For everybody.
The scope of what you are actually going to ask your engineering firm to investigate, I'd actually also like to have that information if that's possible. And then just last, and is that possible? Can I have that? Can I get commitment from the city to do that?
Absolutely. When it's discovered, this is a task force. I invited your boss to be on that committee. We'd love to have you guys
back
involved.
from you on that. We're working on that still together. I
Absolutely.
know that.
Absolutely.
We're not done with that. I know that.
Exactly.
I'm not putting you guys under pressure. You've got a lot of work
Everything
to do.
will be under full disclosure to
I'm
the
just
citizens.
looking to gather data at this point so I can kind of look at it from a different perspective than the perspective you're currently looking
And
at.
if you'd like to submit the credentials of your firm and his credentials, his degrees, we'd be happy to take a look at it as well.
Sure, yeah, no problem. It's actually really not what we do, what you're actually evaluating right now.
Sure.
We have we're wholly sustainable, but we would certainly team with somebody to help them get to the end.
Sure.
And also help with grant funding and such. And then lastly, I guess I'm just wondering about your RFP process, I guess. I asked this question about a month or 2 months ago, I think to Tom Borchert, but I didn't hear back from him. I was just asking who you use for an RFP process. Do you use an Envia, or do you just have a mailing list of individual consulting firms that you like to work with? Or how does that work within the city? I'm just curious about that. Who would know that best? Would that be Mike Kopp? Probably knows.
A lot of times it depends on the project we're doing and the professional service. If it's a professional service, sometimes we'll go out for a request for proposal. We'll advertise on different medium, or sometimes we have a list of contractors or consultants that we use, and we'll go to them, depending on what the project is.
All right, so you generally don't use an Envia type service, or do you know what Envia is? That kind of universal, kind of broad-based RFP service that would go out to the world, and then they'd come back and say, this is what we would provide for you.
But most often we do not.
Okay.
We
That's what I kind of understood, but I wasn't positive. I wanted to just make sure of that.
We put ads in the paper, I believe, Mr. Kopp, and go through the full process, full disclosure, et cetera. But again, this is kind of almost like a city attorney type deal. This is a professional service that only a handful of people are qualified to do. Mr. Burke's fees, if we were to go with him, or anybody's fees, would be at a level that would be normal and customary. But we're not buying widgets here. We're buying high quality, high intellect, and
I understand that, and his firm is reputable. I just know that there are quite a few other firms out there that do what he does. So I'm just wondering if we're comparing what we're comparing, or if we're comparing anything, or just going with one firm. So I just kind of want to take that to another level. Perhaps that would be what I'd suggest. And then I guess that pretty much covers it. If I can have our firm put on a list, that would be great, so that we'd get some of this information. That would be great. I'd appreciate that. And we're here and we're willing to help if we can, in any way that we can. And like I said, we're Elmhurst residents and we care. So, and good luck. I think that you guys are doing a great job in looking at this on a comprehensive basis. I'm happy for that. I'm glad that you're gaining all the information you possibly can in order to make educated decisions. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Trainer. Anybody else for public forum at this time? Anybody? The woman there in the back, in the red?
My name is Darlene Heslop, and I live at 200 North Michigan Avenue, number 227 in Elmhurst. Dr. Burke, I know what PhD stands for, and I know what PE stands for, and I know what FASCE stands for, because I'm actually an engineer, but don't currently do that. But I do not know what DWRE stands for. So could you please explain what that certification stands for? Obviously something important.
Well, it's important to me. I don't know if it's important to everybody else. It's a diploma in water resources engineering.
Okay, good. Okay, so you are certified and obviously a very smart man if you went all the way for your PhD. I do have a couple of comments and some questions. First and foremost, even though I live behind City Hall and I rent, as do many senior citizens in this community and many others, I pay taxes just like everybody else does. They just happen to first go to a landlord who then in turn collects all the money and pays taxes according to that. Otherwise, I'd be homeless because he would have his building in foreclosure. So I just want to make that perfectly clear that I'm just as much of a taxpayer as anybody else in this room or anyone else here in Elmhurst, and I'm just as committed to Elmhurst and what goes on here in Elmhurst, whether I rent or anything else, okay? So I just want to make that perfectly clear, because there's a lot of senior citizens here in this community who the only way that they'd be able to stay in this town is if they rented. Otherwise, they'd have to go elsewhere. And I know that the reason why they want to stay here is chances are they've raised their families here and they've been here for a long time. And so when they need to downsize, maybe they can't afford a condo or don't want one or whatever the circumstances, so they decide to rent. Actually, most of the residents in my building are actually senior citizens. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that for everyone who thinks that I don't pay taxes and they don't pay taxes and anybody else who lives in an apartment building doesn't pay taxes. We do. And at my rent, I pay probably more in my rent than a lot of you pay for your mortgages. I think that one of the things that we need to keep in mind, and I agree wholeheartedly with Alderman Mulliner, is that we need to kind of be sort of careful with this, because there actually were 3 events. There was the middle of June, there was the June 23rd and July 23rd events. And actually, even though in a lot of places the outcome was the same, the reasons for those outcomes were different. And I think that needs to be looked at, is all 3 of those need to be looked at as to what contributed to it, why it happened, and take a systematic approach to all this. As I said last week, I would like for this committee, meaning the council here, to be very proactive, not to be reactive. It's very easy to be reactive, but it's a lot harder to be proactive, but that's the way to go. I think that we need to search long-term. Okay, yes, there are short-term things that can be done, but I think that we need to look long-term, and I think that whoever it is that we end up with as a consultant to us, we need to make that perfectly clear that we're not just looking for the short-term solution, but can you help us find long-term solutions and look for the costs of those long-term solutions, because maybe we can do them over time and do the hardest hit areas first and then kind of go along from there. I think it's great, the idea of utilizing all of our city staff. We pay for them, and I think that that's a great place to start, because they're the ones that really know what goes on here. And many of them have been here forever and a day, and therefore know all the history that's gone into this as well. And I see you kind of giggling over there, but you do know what I mean, is that right, exactly, that you know that this is, you know all about it. I think that we need to look also at, are we going to look at not just Elmhurst and how our problem happened, But I think that a big part of, especially this last one, why it was so devastating to all areas of Elmhurst, not just the south end, which I respect the fact that you all needed to know what was going on, was that it was so devastating to towns to that direction to the east, as well as towns to the other direction. And so I'd like to see if that would be something that would be possible, that we looked at what it is that, because I think that there were other factors that contributed this last time in particular. And I know that you met with several of the mayors and several of the village managers, and I know that some of them were hit a lot harder than we were. But I think that we don't live in a bubble here, and I think that we need to look also at what other towns are going to be looking at and what they're going to be doing. So that's something I'd really like to make sure that we kind of looked at. I just have one other question for you, Dr. Burke. That is, going forward, do you suggest that a more diligent approach would be, from your engineering perspective, be the better way to manage a project such as this versus something that would be very quickly done and kind of less comprehensive from your project management experience? I'm sure that you have a lot of that. So what would be the best way for us to start to look at this, even as citizens, to try to give some input?
Well, looking at it in a comprehensive way is always the way to go, especially when you mentioned earlier that the storms that have caused problems in the recent history have all been a different type of storm event. And looking at it comprehensively and providing to the City Council a list of possible projects so they can prioritize and look at funding different types of projects as you move forward. I won't say another word about overhead sewers again. The only reason why overhead sewers are now good to pursue, people's basements are in disrepair. It's the best time before new drywall is placed and improvements are made, because people don't want to rip that up to put an overhead sewer.
I totally completely agree with your assessment, and that's something that actually I did look at, and I totally agree with that assessment. So for those people that do qualify, and really I appreciate the fact that that was brought up at the last meeting, and if it's possible in the next week or two for that to get rolling. I know that there's a lot of people that really, there's at least 50, 60 people on that wait list, and they're the ones that are the most enthusiastic about trying to get all that done because they want to repair the damage that's done. So I really do appreciate, I know Alderman Healy and Alderman Kennedy put forth that motion, and I really do appreciate it. I know that the initial funding may not be enough right now. Maybe we can find other ways to help shore up that fund, because that's something that really a lot of people really want to look at. And I'm sure that you've mentioned, Mayor, about FEMA, and you've mentioned about IEAMA and some of the other sources that maybe we can tap into perhaps for some grants or something like that. So I appreciate that. And thank you very much for your time. I found your presentation very interesting.
Thank you, Ms. Eslap. Anybody else in public forum at this time? Gentleman here? Sure. Name and address, please. And
Chris Travers. I live at 912 South Hawthorne. I didn't flood, by the way.
All right.
But I sell a lot of pumping systems, and Mr. Burke did a great job tonight. I learned a lot. But when the sanitary sewer was full, and we have to dump it into the storm sewer, and we've had 6 inches of rain or so, where does it go? I mean, you have a limited capacity in the storm already, and we take the sanitary, if I understood it right, we take the sanitary and we dump it into the storm that's already full. Won't it take the path of least resistance and come up out of the storm drains in the street at that time?
Yeah, it does, and so it's a dilemma. We're sending that water into already flooded streets, but as our operator is standing there, he can see the wet well, and when he turns off that extra pump, it starts coming up. So that means more basements are in peril. When he turns that pump on, it goes down. So you want it in the street or you want it in the basement, we obviously try to keep it out of the basements.
And the pumps that run at the creek, are they to fixed capacity, Or are they variable frequency drives also, or?
I believe most of them are variable frequency drives.
Do we manage what flow rate goes into the Salt Creek? Obviously to protect the people who live in Oak Brook or wherever.
I mean, we're only limited by the maximum capacity of the pump. We can pump it full out.
Do we normally do that? I mean, in a situation like we had.
Yeah, we try to
July
maximize what's going out, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Well, Mr. Burke, Dr. Burke, I appreciate your time and your professionalism and your astuteness in answering a lot of these questions. It's obviously you're on top of your game, and we also appreciate your expedience in analyzing the pumps so we can, I think, put to rest what many of the allegations were, and that was pumps weren't running, we didn't hear them, et cetera. So I think that definitely, from a third-party standpoint, looking at SCADAs, looking at all the different systems that we have in place, I think that really brings a lot of independent confirmation to and resolution to our situation. And unfortunately, I think as you mentioned, 7.3 inches in 6 hours, and in the last event, a month prior, 4.2 inches in 20 minutes. One thing that I've been meeting with many of the mayors, both in DuPage and Cook County. In fact, I was with a bunch of mayors today. I was with county commissioners from both sides of Cook and DuPage. We're pushing for federal funding for infrastructure, but we're also pushing, I talked about hiring a professional to help us bring grant money home. We're pushing for cooperation between Cook and DuPage. The Bussey Wood Corridor is relatively an inexpensive fix that would put a little infrastructure in that Bussey Wood Corridor that would actually lower the creek level. It would actually flood a little bit the forest preserve areas, but it would actually lower the creek. That's in Cook County. It would help out Grove, help many of the Cook County areas, but it would really help DuPage in Salt Creek. Am I correct in saying that, if that were to be installed?
That's correct.
Okay. And the cost of that is in relation to doing a lot of other things like reservoirs and everything. That's relatively a minimal fix cost-wise, correct, for maximum benefit?
That's correct.
Okay. But we have environmentalists that would rather see people's basements flood than forest preserve, which was created to actually take water. So those are political issues that we have to overcome between DuPage and Cook. I think this is an opportunity to seize that moment. We've got tens and thousands of people affected, both in Cook and DuPage County, in this whole region, 12-county declaration of emergency. And Governor Quinn on Wednesday at 9 o'clock in Westchester, we're hoping will declare the state a state disaster, which will put pressure on the president to put pressure on FEMA to declare a declaration of disaster from FEMA for the region, which will open up a lot of pocketbooks for infrastructure and for poor people that have seen devastation to their homes. So we're doing everything we can with the mayors and with the congressmen and with the U.S. senators, on a bipartisan effort to make that happen. But in the end, professional services to seek out, if this is a $30, $40, $50 million fix for Elmhurst, and where's that money going to come from? And that's why, I'm pushing professionals to help seek dollars out. We've got a lot of issues here in Elmhurst, from transportation, from Western access, but this infrastructure issue is big, it's paramount, and we need to tap every resource possible. And I pledge to, as mayor, I will do that, providing the council lets me. So, but that may be an engaging, again, professional to go out there, be bipartisan, work with the other communities, and lobby. So, and that's at a national level, at a state level, at a county level, both Cook and DuPage, because we're right on that border. We got part of Cook and we got a lot of DuPage, so we need cooperation between all those governmental entities, governmental councils of government, between DuPage mayors, West Central Municipal Conference, which butt right next to each other. This has got to be a collaborative effort. Alderman Nybel.
Yeah, following up on what you just said, Mr. Mayor, and just a quick observation. The West Central Municipal Conference seems to have been a great resource for its communities over the last 2 weeks, at least what I've understood secondhand. And Ms. Heslop says we should look at how other communities have responded. I don't know what DuPage mayors and managers has been doing for us, and so that should be a subject of inquiry as to, examining what a resource WCMC was for its communities, and what, if anything, did DuPage mayors and managers do for us.
It's a very good question, and actually, we are actually looking at, City Manager Borchert and myself are looking at WCMC. They are going to allow, even though we do have a sliver of Cook County, so we do qualify to join the Council of Local Government, to allow a membership fee for municipalities outside of their normal boundary line. But they have a lot of juice, they have a lot of ability. On Wednesday, they will have every congressman in Cook County that's affected, governor. They really can pull it together. So, and nothing against DuPage mayors. We're part of DuPage, and we're going to work with them as much as possible too. But I agree, we need to tap every source of influence, every source of coalition possible to make this happen. So I agree. Alderman Healy.
Question, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Pezza made a motion before we went into public forum. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to delay public forum, but now I'm going to ask, are we going to take up any of the referrals on the agenda? Or have we, what are we going to do? Because personally, I'd like to see us take up the overhead sewer line referral tonight.
I would personally like to do that. I would ask for a motion on that item. I
don't think she asked for, her motion was to table every item on our agenda sheet, the 8 referrals, until another committee of the whole meeting, and Bram second.
I apologize. I misunderstood the motion.
So a motion and a second is already on.
Was that a motion to table? I didn't hear a motion to table, though. I heard a motion to, was it, did you say motion to table?
I wrote it down.
Okay, very good. So if it's a motion to table and we have a second, then it's going to have to go to the next.
Well, you could vote on it.
We'll have to vote on that? Okay. So we could actually, with the motion to table, if we override the table, so if people that want to vote to maybe bring up one of the items on here, to push that through for next council meeting, then you would just vote no against the table. Alderman Healy.
I guess, just so I'm clear then, maybe this isn't a question for Attorney Storino. Do we have can we have discussion before we take the vote?
You're really not supposed to discuss a motion to table.
Okay.
So if you vote to table it, all items that are on your agenda tonight, if you can move it to a particular COW, or they'll come up at the next regular COW as a normal course. Unless you specify.
Unless you want to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Unless you want to make it a specific date at a specific COW. Otherwise, it'll come up at your next regular COW.
Or if you want to make a motion to suspend rules, then we can go that route as well for discussion, but that's entirely up to you. Alderman Healy?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay.
To enable discussion.
We have a second? Alderman Wagner? Okay, we have a motion to suspend rules to enable discussion. We'll have to vote on that. We'll do that by roll call, please. Motion by Alderman Healy and a second by Alderman Wagner to waive rules to discuss the table.
Voting? Roll call vote?
Roll call vote, please.
Okay, for the
suspension.
Suspend rules and discuss the
Okay.
motion.
All right. Healy.
Aye.
Wagner. Gutenkopf.
No.
Pezza.
No.
Shea.
No.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose, absent. Bram.
Aye.
Hipskin, absent. York, absent. Nybo.
Aye.
Morley, absent. Kennedy, absent. Mulliner.
No.
They're going to allow discussion.
All right, I hope I got this right. It looks like 4 ayes, 4 nays. Oh, excuse me.
I think it's 5 ayes, 4 nays.
That's right, that's right.
5 ayes, 4
5
nays.
ayes, 4 nays, and 5 absent.
5 ayes, 4 nays, and 5 absent. The motion to suspend rules to discuss carries, and we open up the issue for discussion. Alderman Healy?
On the,
On
Alderman Pez's
on Alderman
motion.
Pez's motion. Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly understand the logic to move slowly, to move carefully, to spend money wisely. However, in this case, I think we are doing all of the above. I think we are spending money wisely, or we would be spending money wisely. The overhead sewer program is currently code for new homes. It's a current program that we allow residents to use and have for, I don't know exactly how long, but it's been several years. We fund it already. Excuse me. All we're looking to do here is add money to that fund so that more houses can take advantage of this program already. We've already heard from an expert, Dr. Burke. We've already heard from city staff. We know that this program saves people from getting raw sewage into their homes. I don't know that any of us would argue with that. So to tell these 50 people that we know are on the list already, do we have the exact list? 55 people.
Point of order. Are we debating the tabling or are we debating the item?
I think tabling.
We need to debate the tabling, not the point, not the item.
His argument against the table.
But I think that,
But
isn't that the argument?
my
The argument,
discussion
though.
is going to the heart of why we need to not table this.
Right. Yeah, it's overruled. We're debating the table, which is what we're talking about. Table was the table, all the reports we're bringing this up as an important issue that needs to be discussed. And go ahead, Alderman Healy.
So thank you. So I've got the experts telling me that it's a good idea, that it's potentially the biggest, potentially it's one of the larger solutions to the I&I problem. We've got 55 residents who've already signed up to said they want to spend up to $10,000 to do it. They're looking for help. Some of those residents are going to do it anyhow, whether we process them. Others are not. They're going to wait for us to get our approval. So the longer we wait, the longer those people wait to get the problem solved in their particular house. Lastly, we also have staff time to consider. We've already got 55 people that have signed up. We're going to get more people to sign up. The longer we drag our feet on this, the longer it takes staff to process, and it's not an easy process, as it's been explained to me. It's not a fill out a form and you're approved. There's plan review. There's a lot of other stuff that needs to happen. The longer we wait, the longer those residents who want to get this over with, the longer they have to wait. I see no reason to table it for another night. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else for discussion? Alderman Nybo and Alderman Pezza.
A question to the mover of the motion. I mean, would she consider amending her motion to exclude the overhead sewer installation proposal right now, and then we can table all other proposals, and then we can discuss overhead sewers?
Isn't that what we're already doing? I guess I would say no, let's continue this, may as well continue this discussion.
Yeah, the question is whether you would amend your motion. Your motion is to table all the proposals. Okay.
Okay. All righty. Anybody else? Alderman Leader.
I haven't really spoke tonight because first of all, I'm not an engineer, as I'm not a lawyer. I've said that one before. Like Alderman Pez, we're not engineers. And I really came here tonight to learn, to listen, and quite frankly, I learned an enormous amount from Dr. Burke, and particularly from the give and take between the residents and Dr. Burke. And I can only say that there are no simple answers to complex problems. I can say that about engineering, I can say that about life. But I would like to see us proceed on two paths. Alderman Bram, pardon me. Bram, pardon me, I've known you for 5 years, I'm sorry. He has proposed a comprehensive plan. And I think that's one way to proceed. But the other is specifically with this overhead sewer proposal. It's something that the gentleman over there in the white shirt, that's you, had said, what can we do now? And this is something we can do now. And it's voluntary in the sense, if you don't want one, you don't have to have one. I had one many, many years ago. After the '87 flood, I wasn't living in Elmhurst, and I got hit with 4 feet of water and got clobbered like I was living far north. It was horrible. I know what it's like. But we did put in an overhead sewer, and it did work. It wasn't cheap, but I'll tell you, we had peace of mind after that. So it's really the resident's choice, but it seems to me that this is a logical first step. And as Alderman Healy said, there's 50 people who are lined up, ready and willing to do it. And it seems to me that it would be almost cruel to deny them this, because having been through this 23 years ago, to this day, my wife does not sleep at nights on heavy rains. She's up all night. It scars you. I know what it can do to you. An overhead sewer system will help. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Leader. Alderman Gudenkauf, and I'll go to Alderman Pezza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to argue the merits of the overhead sewer system, because what I'm supposed to be doing is discussing whether we're supposed to table this. I think that this is not something that we can decide right now. There are 55 people on this waiting list, and that's heartbreaking to me that there are so many people that have found out about this program. I expect that there are going to be another 55 and another 55 and another 55 after that. What I don't see us being able to do tonight is to decide how many people we can help, how much money we're going to be able to spend, and where that money is going to come from. And I think we need to table this discussion until our next committee of the whole meeting so that we can put it into the packet of everything we need to discuss. We can't pick out one program at a time, and I think the tabling motion is intended so that we can sit back, staff can gather some information, and come back to us in 2 weeks with enough background so that what we can do is figure out how much money we've got now, how much we can afford, where the money's going to come from. We can look at all of these proposals, which include a proposal for redirecting TIF funds, a proposal for a comprehensive plan, a proposal for sump pump inspections. There's another proposal that talks about containing stormwater on site on many properties, especially residential properties. All of these proposals have to be considered together. And for us to say there are 55 people we want to help now, God love them. I want to help those 55 people. I want to install overhead sewers. But I don't know, because I don't have enough information, if choosing this option and spending this money is going to alleviate the problem for as many people as we can possibly help. And if we decide now that 55 people times $10,000, or maybe the city's only going to kick in half, or maybe the city's going to kick in 2/3, I don't know what we're going to kick in. Let's just say that we're going to pay for half of that. I don't know where that money's going to come from, because it's not in our budget now, and I don't know what else that money could do to alleviate the problem for 55 times X. And I want to help 55 times X. I don't want to help just 55. So I think we, given the amount of information we have now, are not in a position to decide that we should be spending money on this program. So I think it is appropriate to table this discussion, because I think approaching this from a holistic perspective is going to help as many people in town as possible. And so for that reason, I encourage everyone to vote to table this so that we can come back at it better informed.
Bless you,
Bless you.
Mr. Cap. Thank you, Alderman. Before I go to Alderman Pez, the current Mike Cap, Assistant City Manager, who's acting in place of Mr. Borchard today, the current plan is a 50-50 up to, is it 5,000 on the overhead sewer? And then in these dollars currently we're going to be diverting dollars. We're not coming up with money out of
Point of order? We
I
can't debate the item. We need to debate whether we're tabling this.
I overruled that about one more.
I'm asking you to overrule it again.
Okay. Well, I override you.
Well,
so we're
I call
debating
for a vote.
the.
I call for a vote of the City Council, because we can vote to override the mayor.
Okay. God bless you. Motion fails for lack of a second.
I move that we vote to override the mayor. Can I see a second?
Yeah, it's a ruling of the chair. Sorry.
Appealing the ruling of the chair.
All right, then I move we appeal the ruling of the chair.
Takes you a second.
Okay, Alderman Mulliner?
You're not going to debate that. I think you just ought to.
So they,
So,
A voice?
the council decides, a voice vote would be in order, whether or not the motion to overrule the chair is in order.
Can you talk into the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry, a voice vote, I think, would be in order to see whether or not the motion to overrule the chair is in order.
City Clerk Spencer, want to call the roll, please?
Wait, quick question for the city attorney.
Yes.
Does this mean that if we vote yes, then the mayor has to stop talking and he has
Yes.
to turn the floor over to another member of the council?
Yes, he has to stop talking.
All right. Gutenkopf.
Point of
Is it
order.
a voice vote, or is this a roll call
I
vote?
just want to be
just
sure
asked
what
for
we're
a roll
voting on.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did.
To overrule,
Didn't you say Clerk Spencer called the
I,
roll?
I did ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, and I'm discussing, not debating. I'm asking City Manager Kopp to answer questions. I don't think that's debating, it's just discussing. Clerk Spencer, call the roll, please.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Nay.
No?
I think.
Okay. Pezza.
It's an aye vote.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose. Absent. Bram.
Aye.
Hipskin. Absent. York. Absent. Nybo.
No.
Healy.
No.
Morley. Absent. Kennedy. Absent. All right. Let's see here. 6 ayes, 3 nays, and 5 absent. Is that 14?
Real quick here.
6 ayes, 3 nays, 5 absent.
6 ayes, 3 nays, 5 absent. Okay, I'm overruled.
So,
God bless.
okay.
Do I have to give up the gavel? What am I doing here?
no.
Okay.
We'll discuss it.
Appeal the rule of the chair.
Okay.
And the appeal is sustained.
Okay, so who was talking?
So, City Attorney Storino, what do you, should we,
I think we're still, you
In
can call the
discussion.
question on the motion to table.
Microphone, please.
You can call the motion on the motion to table if you wish. Call the question, excuse me, if you wish. Although I don't think you have the full concept.
I'll go to Alderman Pezza. She has more discussion.
Okay. I guess basically, all I want to say is, the reason for my thought process is to tabling this is not because I don't think it's a wonderful idea. I have a brother who flooded in both rains, 4 feet of sewage in his basement both times, lost everything. He needs an overhead sewer desperately, and he can't afford it on his own. So, obviously, for anybody that needs one, we need to do this. But the report that is before us, I am not comfortable with because I don't believe there is enough information here to guarantee this program and how it's going to work, how we're going to implement it. What if 300 more people come along and want this? Can we tell them no? I don't want to tell them no. If 500 people want this, I want them to have it. There's no dollar amount laid out in here as to a max. It says it's going to be redirected from funds for sewer replacement and lining account. Yet, I don't have information as to the impact that if we don't do that, what's going to happen? And when will we do that? And how will we pay for that? And when will that come about? I just think there's too many unanswered questions. Yes, I want this to happen. I would think if we could have more answers in a week or two, I would be pleased with that, and I would be much more comfortable with it. If we're doing this, I want to do it right. To me, we've got one chance to make things right, and we better get it right this time. That's my point.
Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of, I guess, rebuttal points. First, the big difference between this referral and the other referrals, this is an existing program. It's in the budget. We have a system in place. All we're doing is moving funds that staff has recommended they be moved. This is the one thing on the agenda that could have helped people immediately. So if some alderman didn't get all the information or weren't prepared to discuss. The reason we did it in this format, Committee of the Whole, was so that the whole council could discuss as if we were in a committee, which we would have done had we broken this out to Public Works. We would have discussed it in the committee so that when we brought it to the council, we could have taken a vote. The reason we did it this way, based on, I believe it was Alderman Mulliner suggesting to do the committee, so that we could discuss it here and now, so that we could make a decision and move forward. So if there's additional information that's needed, that's why Public Works is here, that's why the experts are here. The intent was to discuss it at this meeting. This is the one referral that can help people immediately. If there are 300 people, and there might be, then we got to figure out where we're going to get the funding for the next 250, or I believe this covers roughly 90 people. Would have covered 90 people. We'll keep finding that funding, or we're going to have to tell them no. I'm worried about getting those people that are on the list now taken care of. We can drag our feet, we can play parliamentary games, and keep going, or we can move on this now. I guess your vote on the tabling will decide which way you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman. Alderman Mulliner.
Okay, my point of the fact that we need to look at this in a holistic way is specifically because of, let's just take this particular thing. One of the things that it states in this report, and I know I'm kind of doing what I said I shouldn't do, and that's debating this item, and I shouldn't really debate this item, but the reality is, in this item, it specifically says that we're going to take the money out of the utility fund that was set aside for sewer lining. When I heard a professional who came in, Dr. Burke, say very clearly to us that there were two issues that were in front of us that were causing us the problem. Number one, and when I'm talking about two issues, they're both addressed in this particular area. One is the overhead sewer needs to be addressed without a question, but the other thing that I kept hearing was the water going into the into the sanitary sewer. The slip lining, or the lining of the sewers, solves that problem. Now, if we're going to take the money from this place and we're going to put it someplace else, I don't know which one's more important. I mean, I've got somebody who's telling me right now we should hurry up and do this because everybody's basement's torn up, but I don't know if that's the right solution. I'm not playing parliamentary games here. What I'm trying to do is get a holistic solution to solve the problems in this town. I got a flooding problem that's happening. My ward's been hit harder than anybody's, and I want to solve the problem for the whole city, not just my ward, and that's why I'm saying let's look at this thing from the big picture and not take one little piece and say, okay, we're going to move money from here to here. That money's sitting in an account right now that's supposed to be designed to use to take care of those sewer systems. We were just told that sewer system is an important thing for us to slip line. Now, which one am I supposed to believe? I mean, I got the same guy telling me both things. Am I supposed to take all this money now and move it to another spot? That's why we have to have a holistic view, and I need to have a better understanding. And yeah, we've looked at one area where it was a great, very educational situation tonight. It was fantastic. But I want to have a picture of what's happening in this whole town, not just one small area. And I want the solution to be something that's going to solve the problem in a bigger way than just, I figured out that here it is, I've got an overhead sewer, and that solved the problem for 50 people. There's 42,000 people in this town. There's not 50 people in this town. I want the problem to solve the problem the best I can for all of those people. I can't do it if I pick and choose one of these items and do it tonight.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Nybo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In my brief experience on this council, few good things have happened when we continue our meetings past 10:30 p.m. I see it's almost approaching 11, and tonight is really no different. I think a lot of these issues are kind of delving into nothing more than quibbling. I'm going to vote no to table this, and that's because I've never been opposed to continued discussion of these items. Whether I'm going to want to move forward on the overhead sewer program, I'm not sure, but I don't mind talking about it right now. I mean, first of all, just look at the request we're actually looking for with respect to the overhead sewer program. Is requested that this matter be forwarded to the Public Works and Buildings Committee for review, evaluation, and recommendation. So there's not even anything substantive that's been proposed at this point. What we've got is a request to begin discussing this item, and what's now on the table is a motion to not discuss it. So I'm open to discussing it. I think it'd be helpful. You're right, we don't have the information on the proposal right now. Well, that's why our staff is still here at almost 11 o'clock. I would imagine that if we are able to discuss it, that will begin diving into the details, such as where the funds are coming from. You know, I see the referral here talks about the money's already been committed to contract work in the city's utility fund category for sewer lining. Assistant City Manager Kopp, that's money that's not going to be used at all in this fiscal year, is that right?
No.
It's not going to be used this year. So we're talking about monies that have been authorized to be expended, but will not in fact be expended for this fiscal year?
No, they'll be expended on the specific sewer projects and the lining.
Well, it's my understanding that we're talking about funds that have been authorized or funds that are available that will not be fully utilized. Am I incorrect about that understanding?
I see Public the Works Director Hughes trying to get a microphone. Mr. Hughes, if you could shed some light, that'd be great.
The intention is to go ahead to actually spend all of that money yet this year. That money has generally been spent on sewer lining, point repairs and sewer lining. So, but I believe the line item is just sanitary sewers, and you know, any project that would enhance the capabilities of the sanitary sewer system, I've always felt would be eligible or would be appropriate to be spent out of this account. For the about $950,000 that's in there, we can line about 15,000 feet of mainline sewer. So that does reduce inflow, but you still have a service every 50 feet going up to the house. So if you line all the main line, it does help, but you've got just as much pipe still with the cracks and with the open joints and all that. So when you do an overhead sewer, you are reducing inflow in that case, which certainly has a positive effect on the sanitary sewer system. And sort of because I have been here for forever and a day, I have history, but when we went through this whole process back in the late 80s, drying out the system is basically what it was. Increase capacity of the plant, line, get the sump pump discharge out. That was all done, and there was always a balancing act of upsizing sewers is hugely expensive, and is that money better spent on a localized fix? We just put in sanitary sewer on Prospect Avenue for $275,000 that serves 19 homes. Prospect's a little bigger lots maybe, so maybe it's a little under, but that's about $15,000 home per home. So, you know, we would be relaying a new line, let's say, if that was the solution that was arrived at, of a larger diameter. Now that's would take care of one block, but then we would be looking at the comprehensive, what about the next block? But just as sort of a parameters, you know, that's the kind of money you would spend to lay a larger pipe, which, you know, still doesn't get rid of the services from each house that come in. So the $5,000 per house has always been viewed as just a good use of funds, and it does get an eye out, and I would think would be appropriate for where this money was spent out of that fund.
Well, so there is a fine line that we're walking right now, but I'm always in favor of talking about this issue, and if quick action is warranted, I'd be in support of that. So that's why I'm going to vote not to table these issues right now.
Alderman Shea.
Just one last thing, though, about Prospect, though. It might have cost that much money, $15,000 per home, but that was an SSA, and those people are going to be paying that back.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Pezza?
I think this is just a procedural question, and forgive me if I'm incorrect. It was my assumption that these referrals, since we are acting as a committee of the whole, that would overrule the Public Works and Building Committee reviewing this anyway. So we are acting as that committee right now. Yes. So this would not go back to them for review, for more answers, for anything. This is it. Am I not correct?
I believe you are correct, and really this is just a direction on the overhead sewer program to direct funds. The funds are already budgeted in the budget. We're not asking for different dollars. It's a direction to move capital money around, basically. So, Alderman Healy?
Just a quick question. I want to make sure we're all operating with the same information. There's a memo dated August 5th to Mayor DeCiani and members of the City Council from Mike Hughes and Tom Borchard. Is Because Alderman Gutenkauf and Alderman Nybel made some comments that made me think that maybe this memo didn't get out entirely, that had where the funds are coming from, where they're going. It was not a referral to Public Works. It was to be addressed tonight as a committee of the whole from the whole city council. So I just want to make sure everybody has that, which in effect is a staff recommendation to the committee of the whole. It was in the packet.
Correct.
No, mine was in my packet. It was dated August 5th, which was,
Oh, right here.
I believe
This
it's on
memo.
Got a copy? Alderman Gutenkauf.
Call the question.
Call the question. All righty.
Wait a second. Doesn't that take a vote, a voice vote?
Unless somebody challenges.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Point of order. What are we voting on?
We are voting on the motion to table the entire deal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So those that want to table the entire referral here, or the entire agenda, but I guess would vote yes, and those that would possibly want to not approve the entire agenda, and possibly make a motion to approve to move forward to report to the council, an action from the council to move funds, would probably want to vote no. So, and I ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Pezza.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin, absent. York, absent. Nybo.
No.
Healy.
no.
Morley, absent. Kennedy, absent. Mulliner,
Aye.
Wagner.
No.
Who did I leave out? Gutenkauf.
Aye.
Shea.
Aye.
Leader.
Nay.
Rose is absent. Okay, I think I got everybody. All right. 5 ayes, 4 nays, 5 absent.
5 ayes, 4 nays, 5 ayes, 4 nays, and 5 absent. The motion to table the entire agenda passes, so that will move forward to the next meeting. So no action will be taken on any of these items. Alderman Pezza?
I just want to clarify, I'm presuming that would mean hopefully next week, our next agenda, and in that 1 week time frame, I would suggest if we have questions and would like more information, can we get it to the city manager so that we can have that information to actually then vote next week? Would that be possible?
I believe that wouldn't, because in order to have that on the agenda for the next council meeting, we would have had to approve one of these. So, and we did have documentation here to back up that particular idea. No? Is that not the case? City Attorney Storino, is it possible at the next meeting to
Discussion.
It's going to the next city committee of the whole meeting.
committee of the whole meeting, which is not next week,
It's not next week.
it's the following week. So we're pushing this off for 2 weeks, just so you know, everybody that voted, push this off.
A minimum of 2 weeks.
Yeah, the 50+ that want this protection, are willing to pay, are being put off, so. And I personally think that was pretty, when we got people willing to invest in their property, I think that's, and we've got a staff that recommends this and gives us memos when people don't read their memos. I personally think that we did the people of this town a discredit today, but that's fine.
There's more than 50 people in town.
Point of order, why can we not discuss this next week as part of the committee of the whole?
We have a council meeting next week.
And we had nothing on the agenda today because most of the committees were canceled. So therefore, the council meeting should be short where we can discuss this next week.
Point of order?
Alderman Healy?
I don't know if it's right,
Yeah.
but the reason we didn't discuss it last week, because it was on the agenda last week during a full city council meeting, was that several aldermen said they wanted to discuss it at the committee of the whole this week.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So now we're going to say we're going to put
That's
it
true.
back on the agenda for next week?
It's okay. Alderman Shea?
No, that's not true. It was on the agenda as referrals for this week.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
And it went to committee and nothing
It is for a motion to adjourn.
No, No, I have something else I'd like to say.
Would you like Alderman Gutenkopf? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I recommend that we have a committee of the whole meeting next week so we can pursue this. There's no reason not to have a committee of the whole meeting next week.
I would second that.
Okay. We'll take that into consideration.
No,
And,
we need to have a committee of the whole meeting next week. I appreciate that you're going to take that into consideration, but several aldermen see no reason not to. There are no committee referrals coming out of this week that we're going to discuss on
Right,
our council
okay.
meeting next week.
We'll do whatever we can to accommodate. I want this passed sooner than later, Miss Alderman. So I wanted it passed tonight, but you chose, and
No,
Alderman
it's nothing
Mulliner
to pass tonight.
chose.
We need to discuss it tonight.
Right, I know.
And we chose not to
what it is.
discuss it.
Chose not to because we don't have enough information, which we'll have
And we
in
had a
the
week to get that information, and some chose not to.
Right. Okay. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Wait, point of order.
Yes.
I do believe there's a motion on the table, unless the city attorney has ruled it out of order.
Is there a motion on the table for?
I heard a motion in a second. What's the parameter?
Did you make the motion, Diane?
I move that we have a committee of the whole meeting next week.
I second.
Okay. All in favor to have a committee of the whole meeting next week? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We have a committee of the whole meeting next week. Very good. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn, and I'm sorry for the folks that have to watch this. We're going to do whatever we can to help.
Wait, motion to adjourn.
And yes, for a motion to adjourn?
I gotta get my job.
Alderman Nybo with a motion, Alderman Wagner with a second. All in favor? By saying aye? We're adjourned.